right, we'll go ahead and call to order meeting of the Town of Superior Planning Commission. Can we have the roll call?
Chairperson Jim Sawtelle.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Robert Momartz.
Here.
Commissioners Bill Sarton here. Bob McCool.
Here.
Jerry Melia.
Here.
Jason Reese. Lisa Ritchie.
Here.
Anthony Stewart.
Here.
Steve Whitty.
Here.
Attorney Hillary Graham.
Here.
Planner Stephen Williams.
Here.
All right, thanks, Phyllis. Okay, next item is public comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items. See, we've got a couple members of the public here. Would you like to say anything?
Susan Bauer, 1770 Morrison Court. I have three things that I wanted to bring up. Hopefully I have enough time. First off, regarding consent, I don't know what is on the agenda because it wasn't published on Friday per your announcement that your agenda would be published on Friday. You sent out a notice saying that the planning committee meets on this date. And in there's language that says the agenda will be published the Friday before. It wasn't published as of yesterday. And that's happened a couple of times, so I haven't been down here before. So maybe that's something's broken in the system that can be corrected.
All right, we'll look into that.
Okay. Second, I wanted to ask, what is the process when a developer comes to the town with an application? At what point in the process are the public invited to a hearing to talk about the proposal?
Stephen, do you want to take that?
Application. You're invited to come. You can comment via email once you get your notice. So notice goes out to property owners within a 1,500-foot vicinity via mail when we have a scheduled hearing, and then you're welcome to come to either the Planning Commission or the town board meeting or both and comment through this type of, just like you're commenting now.
Okay, so is it only within 1,500 feet or beyond 1,500 feet?
It's within 1,500 feet that people are noticed, like in the mail, but everybody gets the notice. The
So if
public
they're at
notice.
2,000 feet, they don't get the notice?
That's correct.
Okay. And when,
Is it at 1,500 or 1,000?
I thought it was 1,500.
I'm going to look
Is it
it up
1,000?
real quick.
Okay.
and then when do you get notified that there's an application? Where in that process it is? Like within 30 days, or is it 3 months, or what's the time frame to be notified?
You get noticed when we have the hearing. So that when the hearing's scheduled, it's not the hearings have to be noticed within a certain time frame, which I think is 14 days. But you're not. I mean, you don't necessarily get noticed any time ahead of that. You get noticed for the hearing about the application.
Okay, so how does the public find out when an application's been submitted?
That notification doesn't go out until we have an actual hearing. So the public doesn't necessarily know that the application's been submitted. We don't necessarily know when an application will get to a hearing or whether or not it even gets to a hearing.
Okay.
We've had applications come in that staff has gone round and round on comments on, and it doesn't go anywhere.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
I was just curious, where in the process does a public hearing get
It's
triggered?
So the public gets noticed for hearings
Okay.
as part of the application.
Okay, and that's within 14 days of...
I think Phyllis is looking up the code, but that's my recollection.
No later than 15 days.
15
and it's
days.
1,000 feet.
It's 1,000 feet, okay? I
Okay.
apologize.
All right, that's good to know. Thank you.
Those numbers come from the assessor's office, and it's a requirement on the applicant to provide that. And we confirm it once it comes in, but it's part of the application standard, so I'm sorry I miscited it. But
Okay. All right. All right, that's certainly interesting. And then I have to ask a question that's been in the back of my mind. So please excuse me for being so bold, but what assurances does the citizens have that that staff nor committee members make any profit on a proposed application? That there's no conflict of interest?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Just a point of order. Public comment is meant to be kind of a one-way street. So it's not your opportunity to ask questions of the board necessarily. If there's something that comes up that the commissioners would like to respond to, we can certainly agendize that for a later date.
And I echo what our town attorney has to say, but I will say this. I think the short answer is state and federal law is the assurance that there is no graft or corruption involved in profiting from a conflict of interest. If you're aware of one and we should know about it, then I would recommend that you come forward, tell somebody about it. We would look into it. I've been on the Planning Commission for over 5 years. I'm not aware of a single incident where there's even been anything remotely close to anything like that. So, but Hillary's quite right. This is, and I don't mean to be a nudge on procedure, but this is kind of intended to give you a chance to speak your mind. But as far as question and answers go,
Sure.
it's probably best that we work through staff, and then if you want to maybe get something on the agenda, if you want to approach the full commission, we can do that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I'd also want to add that in addition to state and federal law, there are provisions within the town's own code regarding conflicts of interest. If you wanted to peruse those, they're available on the internet.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, Kelly McCauley, 1950 Shamrock Drive. Same agenda. Of course, I go blank as soon as I go to. How far is 1,000 feet? Like, I can't picture it in my head. Like, does it cover all of Saddlebrook and on the other side, so we'd get notice of what's going on if and when the builder or the plan goes through?
3 football fields plus.
3 football fields? Plus.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think is your concern the
That we wouldn't
Zaharias-
get notification.
Your concern is the rezoning of the Zaharias property?
Well, yeah, it's the, the rezoning, and who actually approves the zoning of that?
If it's an application for rezoning, ultimately that goes to the Board of Trustees.
The Board of Trustees.
It starts here.
It starts
But
here.
we don't make that decision.
Right, but so when you said that, no conflict of interest, that encompasses everyone involved in the town, the trustees and everything, just, because I've had the builder that might be putting in this plan, there's a lot of issues with him, and I'm afraid that he will do the same thing and build shoddy, and that could affect all of us. There's a lot of issues that comes with this gentleman, so, I just want the town to be, very proactive, because, I came up to the town to try to find the info on this guy, and all those records were lost, and I was told it was just really my insulating, and there's a lot of issues. And then also, if it's in the plan that he's doing 88th Street, is Louisville on the plan, are they okay with it? Like, when the plan comes, is he making it wider? Or is it just going to bottleneck at the bridge again? Do we know that yet?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to what our town attorney said in that we
You're
won't
gonna-
want to get into question and answer, but our staff is able to answer those questions for you.
Okay, so we'd have
At
to.
any time and tell you where this is at in the process.
Okay.
My understanding is that there have only been concept plans.
Right, I
passed
do
around.
understand that. Okay.
No, I'll tell you, I'd encourage you, I would encourage you to just reach out to staff or town manager.
So
mean,
I would ask.
They'll sit down and talk to you. Just call and arrange a time and come in during the day. I've done that as a citizen. And
Okay.
send emails in and see if you can get somebody to sit down with you and just talk about your concerns.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. No, that's good to know. I'm sorry, I'm just totally, all right, I guess it's all something I have to sit down with the management and just voice my concerns about what's going on and how, okay. Well, that's it, but thank you for everything. Sorry, I'm total space cadet.
It's okay. Thank you for your comments.
Thanks.
There's also last Fridays that
First Fridays.
First Fridays that some of the board members have at.
Oh, at the Starbucks?
Yeah, that's the time to get their attention and ask questions too.
Yeah, I've gone to
you know.
one of them. so.
I think you'll find our staff to be
Yeah.
very, very accommodating and generous with their time, and we'll help you kind of
Well, I
guide
didn't
you
know
through
what the
this.
steps were, like, could I go to the town and sit down and ask?
If we're gonna,
Sorry.
we need to have you at the microphone.
I'm sorry. No, I didn't know what the proper sequence was. Do I bring it up here? Or, can I go to the staff or the town and find out who I talk to? Because I have gone up to the town when I was trying to research, when I was having all, no insulating in my walls, and they were like, oh, well, all those records are lost, we can't tell you. I was like, well, who inspected it? Like, do we have, my worry is if any building, like even the new town, do we have proper people inspecting all the work that's getting done?
The short answer to that one is yes.
Yes.
But what I would encourage you to do is contact the town manager,
Okay,
and he'll be able to steer you to the right staff person if he can't sit down and talk through and answer all of your questions on process and everything else. I mean, he'll be able to steer you to the right person.
okay, great. Thank you.
Yep, you bet. Okay. Next item is I guess on the consent agenda, the minutes of the July 11th, 2017 meeting. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at those? Anybody have any changes? I did have one, Phyllis, if I can find my notes here. I think on the top of page 2, I guess in the second full sentence, it says there was also a discussion about having the planning commission approve the letter of recommendation to be presented to the board at that meeting. I think it should be memo of recommendation. Because the following statement is Hillary Graham, town attorney, said the memo should be approved by the entire commission. That's all I had. Did anybody else have anything? Could we have a motion to approve the minutes? Commissioner Omartz, second. Commissioner Cool, all those in favor?
Abstain.
Okay. Commissioner Stewart abstain. Okay. Next item is discussion of the cover memo with recommendations regarding Northwest Sub-Area Plan and McCaslin Corridor Transportation Safety items for town board presentation on August 14th. And I just wanted to thank Commissioner Ritchie for taking the laboring oar on the memo having to do with the Northwest Sub-Area Plan.
Did I?
Should we just go in order then on these things and take that one up first? Let's see.
Stephen, are you able to put this on letterhead for us, or do we need to, or are we just going to submit it as is?
We'll just finalize it tonight, and then I'll put it in the format it needs to be in.
Thanks.
I guess first off, did anybody have any comments or changes, edits?
I got a bunch of stuff to talk about. I'll let others.
Did you have anything, Bob?
Yeah, I've got a few things I wanted.
You want to lead us off? Or?
Go off on? Okay. So I handed out a memo that had I had listed some of the priorities in that document I put out. It's let's see, it was under the purpose on the second page, I think it is, of my memo. So just some of the, most of this looks good. Some of the verbiage I liked on mine was just like the ensuring that existing communities within the planning area be a safe and livable place for residents.
That's a great goal.
Yeah, just kind of work, if we could work that in. There was one that was similar to that. And then the marketplace being distinctly separate from the neighborhoods that are in town, and the effort to make that happen. Let's see. And then other than that, yeah, those were the two I thought it'd be nice to work in.
So the distinctly separate, I remember that discussion, and you feel free to disagree with me. My thought on that might be rather to hear from the neighborhood, kind of collectively as a whole, to figure out, do they want it to be distinctly separate, or do they want it to be connected, and in what manner?
Fair
So,
enough. Yep.
That's just my thought on that.
Sure. No, that's cool.
But I
You're right.
really like
I'm
the
inserting an
addition-
opinion there for
Nope,
sure.
I really like the addition of the first one. I think a
Okay.
safe and livable place for residents. I don't think you're going to find anybody
Okay. No,
who
don't have a
doesn't
problem
agree
with
with
that.
that.
No, agree.
But that's just my opinion. If
Yeah.
you guys disagree, feel free to jump in.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Safe and livable places.
Yeah, is that one okay? And then the other one, so the affordable and senior housing needs. So the word affordable just creates
the hot
crazy
button,
turmoil,
right?
and it's a
I
hot
hear ya.
button, and I don't know if we want to go there or not.
And again, this is probably my bias coming in, because
Yeah.
this is something that I feel really strongly about. So if you guys want to strike that language,
Yeah, my apologies.
totally fair.
But I was just nervous that could
Mhm.
just bury the whole thing if we focus on trying to figure out whether we want to afford. But again, that's another thing that we could
Mhm.
allow the residents to bring in, right? We could take it from that approach. So, same thing with senior housing needs, but I don't know how we phrase those in general terms, determining the uses that we'd like to have in this area.
Maybe we
or
strike
something.
affordable and senior and just put housing needs for the community or
Yeah,
something.
I mean, it could
I
be
don't know.
housing and retail, I could be other things too, but,
Or we could strike the whole thing.
yeah.
So I kind of like that addition, personally. And I think that we have to look at what our intent is when looking at affordable. I understand the rationale for wanting to strike that piece out, because what is affordable? I mean, it just opens up a whole another box. But I think that there does need to be some sort of dedicated senior housing or housing for the elderly in our community. Currently, what we have in place doesn't necessarily fit the needs of that population, and we're excluding a great number of people who'd like to live in our town, live in our area, by not having options for them.
Well, what about something like interest in different types of housing for the Northwest Superior area that could include things like affordable or attainable? I'd like to throw that in there too, if we're going to do it, or senior living, just to use them as examples rather than recommendations. Put them in there as, for example, these housing needs, additional housing needs that might be accommodated by Northwest Superior, such as affordable, attainable, senior living type things, to give people, I don't know, rather than actually putting our opinion in there.
Well, and aren't we, I might be misreading this, folks, tell me if I am, but aren't we just saying these are some issues that we think warrant further study? I mean, it may be that as we delve into it, or as our consultant delves into it, there just isn't really a groundswell of support for any one of them, I guess. That's sort of my take on it. But, I mean, I think we all know there's probably going to be, just from the feedback we've received from the community already, some of these issues are issues that people have identified that are important to them.
And maybe we could change the lead-in sentence, because right now it says primary issues. Maybe we could just say some issues that have been discussed or identified include blah, 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 that they're just ones that we've brought up here at the meeting, and they're not necessarily the things we're going to go do, but would that be,
I think that
that
makes
softens
sense.
that softens the list a little bit, maybe. Is that-
Yeah, because I don't think this is intended to be exclusive, right? I
Right.
envision that a consultant would be engaged, and they may identify
Yeah.
things we haven't thought about or heard about.
Yeah.
Aren't we also, in a sense, trying to provide a forum where people come in and speak their mind and maybe hear somebody else's issues and expound upon them or bring their own? I'm not sure we have to be bound by some preconceived list, because that
Right.
kind of narrows things by definition, whereas I think the main point of emphasis is that we're trying to provide an opportunity for this area, which is going to be impacted the most, to step up and say what they got to say or feel what they have to feel.
And the flip side of that, though, too, is that people need to know what could happen, right? So that's the other,
Agreed.
right? So having things that have been tossed around. I mean, Anthony's been talking about senior housing for a long time, and
For-
that should
to
be,
be
that
sure.
should, yeah, it's a passion of his, and it's an important topic for us to be discussing. And, you know, I mean, I personally am concerned about the cut-through traffic, and, you know, so we have things that have just come up because we're citizens of the town. So, yeah, putting them out there for discussion, but then encouraging additional things for people to talk about, so we can finally come to a list that we're going to focus on when this is all done.
Yeah. And see, my understanding is I did not think that this was poured in bronze yet. I thought this was more of a framework to get us to where we want to be, to get us some questions that we can ask our community, and you know, that's how I'm viewing that. So, on some level, I know that we needed to trim the number of questions that we wanted to ask, but I think that what we have here, in my opinion, is broad enough to get us to where we need to be.
Yeah, I would agree with Anthony. I think, if I recall, and again, tell me if my memory's faulty on this, but I think we were thinking we needed to narrow the range of topics early in the process when we were contemplating that we were going to be
Yeah.
conducting these open houses.
Yeah.
And then we sort of decided, well, we probably better get professional help in doing that. And I guess I understand what you're saying completely, Bob, but I would really encourage whoever participates in these community outreach events to just bring whatever issues
Absolutely.
they feel are important to them.
And maybe rather than revising the bullet points, if y'all are comfortable with them, we add either a bullet point or a sentence at the end, that this doesn't preclude, other issues that could be identified
Yeah.
during community discussion, or,
And we can do that right here in this top line, if I guess you
Mhm.
lead into this.
Yeah.
So then if that's there, then I'm good.
Should we strike primary? Is that what you're
Yeah, I was thinking
Okay.
primary, and then this, and maybe, as Commissioner Ritchie was saying, it doesn't preclude, issues to be identified during the process. I mean, that's the whole point of this process.
Right.
This is just a list.
So you want to add another bullet point? Is that what you're saying at the
Yeah,
bottom? Any
either a
other-
bullet point or kind of an introductory or closing sentence.
Well, maybe a closing,
to
yeah.
Kind of this isn't word, so I can't edit, but we can think through that.
Let's see, some of the issues identified include the following, but are not.
But are not limited to.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole point here is that we're engaging the community, so. And maybe the next maybe the next paragraph basically
Covers
takes
it.
care of it, right? I mean, it's determined that professional assistance will benefit future discussions, and I'd say let's let it go. I think.
Okay.
Let's see, is everybody okay with that?
Yeah, but if I could go back to your first comment, Bob, where did we decide to put in the safe and livable
Oh, yeah.
language?
Oh, true. Let's see, so,
And that could be the first, we could add a bullet point to the very top.
yeah, we could just put it at the top, that's fine.
Everyone's silent. I'm going to make a bunch of typing errors.
Well, then I'll just continue on to the next one.
We're
So-
just being amazed by your skills.
Yes. Click, click, click.
Remarkable.
So the other thing I had highlighted was that, I just want to throw out there, because it just jumped out at me and concerned me. So the public engagement process that includes residents of the entire community, business owners and representatives of the area, and developers, that one threw me.
I threw that one intentionally because I wanted to talk about it. So
Okay.
recognizing
Go for it.
that we might have some discussion, I just, on the flip side, on one side, I want to acknowledge that, none of this happens without investor dollars coming from some manner, whether it's residents, whether it's outside dollars. What type of development do we want to see, and if we have a desire for certain types of development, engaging developers to maybe figure out what might entice them to do those things might not be the worst idea in the world.
I like that.
However,
I like how you said
understand
that.
the flip side, right? Because I don't want this process to be viewed as we're catering
Right.
to what the developers want to have happen. So I'm totally interested in what you guys have to say about that. I knew that would be
Yeah.
controversial.
No, I like how you, the way you described it. I'm cool with that. Absolutely, how we articulate that. It didn't jump out as this did come across as finding out what developers' interests are and what would they like to do in there. That's how that. But
But you can read it both ways, right? So
I
if
guess,
we need
yeah,
to wordsmith it,
yeah, a
or
little bit.
to to do that, or I don't know. Just
Yeah.
curious on your thoughts.
I really liked how you said it. I'm good with that.
I mean, I like the concept of engaging with developers who may be interested in investing in the area, only insofar as it's consistent with what the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
is
an after
wanting to
we've
see.
had discussions with the community.
Right.
Is this realistic, right? Is it
Yeah.
that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Would developers even want to do the things we?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
What about a separate bullet item? How about just separating that out in a separate bullet that says,
We can expand.
yeah, continue, or, I don't know, discussions with developments, or with developers after the,
Because we could kind of lump it in with the second bullet, which I think is more of kind of the
oh, yeah.
the land use market economic analysis, to include discussion with developers or possible investors in the area. I don't know. Maybe it needs to be a separate thing.
That might be a better bullet point to be under, with
Okay.
developers, being under that second bullet point.
Yeah, no, I like lumping it in there if we can, yep.
And I'm thinking also that we just have to have some way to engage the developers and know that, so that they know that our community is involved in this process and
Yeah.
that they're just not gonna come in and put something where they think they'd like to put it and build it the way that they'd like to build it.
Right.
Without having some accountability.
But I think we also should recognize, there are good developers, right? And so if
Oh, yeah.
we can guide this process and engage developers who, want to do the right things and want to respect the community, we potentially could tweak it in ways we might not have imagined, but could get something built that might not otherwise be possible. So I don't know the best way to phrase that.
Well,
but
and it feels like, where we have developers engaged already, right?
Mhm.
So Rogers Farm, right? It's actually, the owner of that property with their developers would be part of this process. They're
Mhm.
engaged with this area already, and I think they should be included in the discussions and everything else. That's property owners
Mhm.
with their representatives. I'm less interested in, at the beginning part where we're trying to figure out what we want, I wouldn't have any interest in bringing in other developers just to find out what they might want to do here. I'd rather us find out what we want to do here, and then once that's done,
Work with them.
then if there are other developers that we know and respect that or that our consultant knows that they may want to bring in and tell us whether something's
Mhm.
even realistic or that there might be any interest in the market, like you said in bullet point 2, doing it in that order would feel pretty good.
I think we're all in agreement. I don't know
Mhm.
if we get that message across.
So maybe in that first bullet point, I don't know if we can.
So Steven's tweaked it a little bit. Let's
Oh,
look
okay.
and see.
Oh, good. Okay.
I just moved it down, but
Oh,
that's all I
gotcha.
did.
So
Just take
engage
that last part of the
developers
sentence and move this part down and add another engage.
Hmm.
If somebody else wants to type, you guys are
Yeah.
more than welcome to. But I'm,
We just came up with the phrase of community-supported development
Oh, I like that.
Mhm.
to kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
package that whole thing, where the community's been involved in the decision process
Mhm.
and they're supportive of
Yeah.
where it's going, the direction it's going in.
So we want to engage the developers. What was your word?
Community-supported development.
Community-supported development.
How do you envision that sentence reading?
Well, yeah. How about, what could we just take that sentence? Engage developers interested in the community
Community-supported
supported development ideas that arose from the what are we calling this? The
Loosely
planning
calling it the
process
outreach
or
process.
outreach,
Community outreach.
outreach process is probably
Yeah.
a good word. So engage developers interested in
Community-supported development.
community-supported
Mhm.
development that,
Seems to fit.
That's a development.
yeah.
Supported.
Sorry.
You're good.
Yeah.
It's been a long day, Steve.
Yeah,
It
I know.
has.
Communities.
I think there should be an interested in community supported development.
Is there more to that sentence, or is that it?
I was gonna, that arose from the community outreach process? Or that came out of the community outreach process? To qualify it?
Or community supported development ideas resulting from the outreach process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
There
think
you
that's
go.
better, because right
Yeah.
now it reads like we're gonna put money in to support it. versus-
Yeah, I
Right,
did
right,
worry
right.
about that, right? As I read that, does this mean?
The ideas is really good, the ideas.
Yep, so we're not funding this.
We're not-
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I don't want to lose the fact that we're actually interested in hearing what they have to say too.
Well, yeah, if we go back to the first one where business owners represented, okay, he said business owners and representatives.
Mhm.
And that could be representatives / developers. I mean,
Yeah.
in the area, I don't, but they would be, at that point, if they're not developing, they would be representatives of the business owner, I guess.
We can leave it. I'm good. It's fine. Yeah.
All right, so my next one was, the mention of a traffic study. Let's see, traffic analysis. So I think we've analyzed traffic to death in this area, honestly.
Fair enough.
And I think we have the analysis we need.
Okay.
I was just going to discourage more traffic analysis, but actually solutions for, implement or discuss or
Mhm.
whatever solutions for providing traffic calming, mitigation of cut-through traffic and other issues related to traffic in the area, based on
Previous,
analyses that
yeah.
we already have. That was what
Nope,
I thought
sounds
there.
good.
How about implement solutions for, well, not implement, but discuss, implement, discuss solutions
Develop.
for providing, yeah, no, rather than,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
And then my last thing was, the last paragraph, the alternatively,
Mhm.
the town board could. I just wanted to figure out whether we really wanted to throw an alternative at them, and talk about what you were thinking there with.
Well,
the-
my thought, right, I mean, I know we've been breaking this up into chunks, and we felt like we had, the resolution, kind of stands on its own. We are asking for a chunk for public money, or for outreach money right now, recognizing we have time concerns, recognizing we don't get FaceTime with the board very often. I don't see any harm in going for kind of the whole thing right now with them, so that we can get one consultant on board to potentially do the whole thing. From a planning perspective, it's more cohesive in my experience if you don't kind of change players halfway through the game. If we have somebody do the outreach, and then how do you communicate that to maybe a future planning consultant? So we can strike that if you feel like it's too much. I'm not sure, maybe can you share why you're concerned?
Yeah, my concern is that it turns into a much bigger ordeal with the board, and it takes many more meetings and asks us questions about, well, gee, what does that mean, and what's that
That
gonna
would
look
never
like,
happen.
and, it seems like I mean, it could go either way, right? It could go, yeah, let's go ahead and just budget. I mean, and maybe we could recommend budgeting for
So
a
they approved the
continued
15,000 now and recommend the
budget.
2018 budget includes the
Yeah,
remainder of the.
include the remainder of,
Mhm.
which I'm sure staff can come up with a rough number of some sorts, to finish the process, and even make a recommendation that we make our selection
Mhm.
afford somebody who can continue the process.
Right, whatever RFP we draft or whatever, includes the whole scope, but funds
Yeah.
are, 2017 is this much and 2018
18
is
is
the rest, yeah.
budgeted, right, so that we can, then the money's at least there, and all we have to do is convince them to approve it. That was,
What assurance can they give related to budget now, though, if they don't actually approve a budget in November? I mean, they could give kind of an intentional, head nod, right, but we wouldn't probably know.
I mean, I can't really speak as to what the board will do. I'm sure they can do whatever they want. So I think you could certainly ask about 2018. And, I mean, you're recommending that this, and maybe even providing the context that you feel like this initial phase will be done in the next 2 or 3 months, and then you want to roll right into having a full, blown small area plan, RFP ready at the beginning of the year and budgeted
Yeah.
for the next year. I don't know how specific it really needs to be, but the numbers that we've discussed for a study of that size is probably $100,000 or thereabouts.
Okay.
So, I mean, you
So,
give
yeah,
them a ballpark
yeah.
as far as what it might cost, but I don't know that. I mean, that's what the RFP process is for. We kind of send something out and we see what the bids are. I mean, and they tell us what it's going to cost
Yeah.
us. But I mean, that's
Sure.
the idea, or that's the
but
scope.
if it's in the
of
budget, the
idea.
odds of it getting approved,
Correct.
the expenditure approved are much
Yeah.
higher than,
Exactly.
Right,
Then
yeah.
coming up with $100,000 out of thin air. So
yeah.
I say we ask for it all up front and see what they go for. I think, like we did with our work sessions, we stayed working at all these work sessions to come up to the point we're at now, and we didn't lay off the gas. To propose this to them and all the work we've put into this so far, we've asked them for $15,000 to hire a consultant so we can get this process started. Alternatively, what do we need to hire one consultant? I think we can change that language to to identify that we're looking at one consultant based on your recommendation, Commissioner Ritchie, and ask for, give them 2 options. And say we need $25,000 to do the larger study with one consultant. We give them 2 options, but we ask for it now.
And, well, he's suggesting it could be 100,000 on top of the 15. I don't know if we have enough information to make a recommendation to go spend 100 grand on an RFP, because we don't know what, well,
Right.
I guess we know it's going to have to happen, we just don't know what, I mean, we don't know what the outcome of the,
Right. Well,
of
this
the
is, we're
first phase
asking
is going to
for
look like.
money to
but-
pay for a consultant to help us get to that point.
I guess for what it's worth, and I appreciate your comments, Jerry, I think they're good, but I kind of fall in the camp of Bob on this one, that I'm a little concerned that the greater the ask, the more analysis and delay we're going to run into, and we really just want to get things moving. I'm wondering, folks, could we say, instead of alternatively, just say, looking forward, the town board may consider approval of funds to cover the entire planning process.
I'd
Presumably be-
go as far as to ask for them to budget it in
In
2018.
2018.
I mean, I'd go that far,
Yeah.
maybe say,
Something like
included
that.
in this as a recommendation to
Mhm.
include $100,000 or whatever staff recommends, to continue this process in 2018 and get it in the budget this year before it's finalized,
Yeah,
for sure.
Which is November. It's November.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I would make that an ask, I wouldn't make it an alternative thought.
Sure.
No, I like the, additionally, or however, right? Like,
Yep, in addition to,
here's our
but-
15 grand we're asking for now.
Yeah.
And then.
I like Commissioner Sautel's solution.
Yep,
The looking forward thing.
yep.
So I do think it would be a win if we can come away with the
Right.
approval of the $15,000
Mhm.
grant and get the RFP out. And that would be mission accomplished for the moment, I think.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Yeah. And I mean, they could not do the 100,000 in the budget, but I think if we just straight out ask for it, I mean, it's a given. This isn't gonna stop after we talk to everybody.
I
It's
can't
just gonna
imagine.
continue, so.
Can I ask one question? How did we come up with I don't remember how we came up with the 15,000.
You said 10 to 12.
Okay.
I said, let's make it 15 and
Okay.
give us a little bit more.
Are you looking to add a
Very
same
scientific.
percentage to mine?
We might find out it's 32 and then we're screwed, but I don't know.
I think it's probably a reasonable number for an outreach based
Yeah,
on the
you have more
scope,
experience.
based on
Yeah.
the scope that we've described.
We're counting on you putting 20,
Yeah,
30 hours into this too. But I was hoping we as a commission would be involved and help, help them,
Yeah.
not ask them to go figure out what we need, but have them sit with us and build what we think we want, and frame it in such a way that delivers what we need to hear from the community.
I think that reads pretty well, looking forward.
Yes.
Do you think we need to put an estimate in there, or seems like we might be out on a limb if we,
I don't want to scare them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
it'd probably be good to get a little more information on what that
As
would
in
be.
the amount as indicated? Or
To be
is that
determined.
vague enough?
Well,
We
somewhere
lost.
between now and November, a number's going to have to come out.
Yeah, no,
That's
right,
true.
we'll need
Yeah.
to, for a budget, we'll have to, but I think we could work on that and look at
It
some.
might be better if they ask Matt,
Yeah.
and Matt answers the question at the board meeting, that, gives Stephen a chance to throw it around and
Sure.
see what everybody else thinks and put it on Matt's sheet when he's sitting there waiting for questions to be asked.
Couldn't we also in the RFP ask the consultant to, give us some ideas on their capacity and willingness to carry forward if we engage with them on this level? I mean, it seems like that's something we could, just find out if they have the ability to do that and how much that would be. And it seems like we could circle back with the board if we need to.
If we get it early enough that they might be able to give us a number.
Does that sound reasonable, Stephen?
That seems reasonable, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that if you also set a budget, then the consultants are going to work to that budget as well.
Yeah.
It may not be as detailed as it would be, like a $60,000 budget may not be as detailed of a plan as it would be if it was 100 or 120,000, but it's still more than we have now. So
I could go either way on this. Whatever you all want to do is fine. If we want to throw out a number.
I don't feel ready to put a number to it. I don't know that we need to.
No, again, I like your idea to see about the consultant, if, moving forward, they'd be willing to continue with the project.
Yeah.
But after debating it in my mind, I agree, if we can get the 15,000 and get the first step going,
Mhm.
I think that's the win we're looking for here.
Nice.
All right.
Good edits.
So that leaves it general, and if the question gets asked to staff, they'll either have the answer or they won't, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we can ballpark a number, right? Like, I think, if they're,
Right.
with it, that isn't going to tie our hands too much if in August 14th, council or board kind of wants to know,
Yeah.
we can ballpark something that we can work with if we give them a range.
That probably leads into a question I had, just to throw out for everybody's, the good of the order. I mean, I'm planning to go to the August 14th meeting. I assume other folks are as well, and we probably should be thinking about, how do we want to break this up? Who's going to present these? Are we going to have a dialogue? Is it fair for us to expect a dialogue with the board when we present these?
I mean, I assume they'll discuss it and respond, but you're presenting to them your plan, and they may have questions. They may choose to digest it. They may, I don't know that they necessarily have to take action on it, and I don't know what they'll do.
My concern with a dialogue is that each one of you would answer individually.
Okay.
What we have here, once it's final, is a pronouncement of the Planning Commission as a whole. It would be hard to have a dialogue that doesn't then include each of you chiming in as individuals. So I don't know how we would manage that.
Okay.
Mm.
All right.
What's your advice generally on having dinner discussions with boards and the town
I'll
board?
first clarify, it's not a dinner. It's just, it's
Oh.
on the agenda for that meeting.
Oh,
so-
it's an agenda item.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought this was
Yeah.
a dinner, so that's my mistake.
Yeah.
Okay, so that this is an agenda item then, right, gotcha.
Yeah, this
It's
is-
part of the.
It's part of the regular
Formal meeting.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay, I thought this was a
Yeah.
dinner. All right.
Do you normally, I mean, do they have, is it the commission chair who stands up and presents this, or do we appoint somebody, or how does that normally work with the other commissions?
So, commission chairs, I guess, typically are the ones that come and speak, but I don't know that it has to be.
I mean, I know committee chairs get up there and
Right.
push their agenda as an individual to the board.
I think
Well-
the more of you that can be there is it's probably good, you know, to at least hear what they're going to have to say as well. But I think you're going to be at the dais, you know, or at the podium talking to
Okay.
the dais, so it's
There's
not
al-
going to be. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt. There's also an opportunity for each of you as individuals to speak in your individual capacity at public comment. If you wanted to preface or kind of foreshadow the Planning Commission's presentation by giving your own personal take on it, I think that's probably helpful to separate your role as individual citizens from then the Planning Commission as a whole.
Sure.
And you would encourage Hillary, we do that during public comment, and then with respect to the actual presentation of the recommendations, would there be an address to the entire board at that point?
I certainly think somebody, maybe it's the chair, maybe it's someone else, acts as sort of the ambassador and says, you know, you have before us our written recommendation, but it's not really going to be a time to expand on it a whole lot.
Yeah. Will this agenda item include public comment on that item, or will this have to be done during?
It will not. It's not set up as a hearing, so it's,
Will
there's
it be
no
on the consent
built-in public
agenda,
comment.
or-
No, it'll be a discussion item, but discussion for the board, not
Okay.
necessarily for the public.
Okay, so for the public to speak, they should speak
At
during
public
public comment. Okay.
Mhm.
So I'd like to take a leap of faith and say that they'll have all the information available to them by the time of that board meeting. However, I don't want to assume that, and I'd like to ask, is our plan and our goal tonight to complete this so that we can get this to them in time for them to
Yeah.
have
So that
it?
it's part of the
I think
packet.
so. I think it has to go into the packet by the 4th, is that right, Phyllis?
The 8th.
Oh, the 8th, okay, for that, for the
The
board to
packet goes
have
out
it.
the 8th, but,
Oh.
Okay,
but staff probably has to work on it no later than the 4th.
okay,
And we have to finalize it as a body
Mhm.
tonight,
Tonight,
right?
yeah.
So, yeah.
yeah. Well, if I can, if you guys can indulge me for a minute, just on the topic of presenting this stuff, I mean, I'm happy to do it, but you know, if you want to break it up, if somebody wants to present this piece and have somebody else present the McCaslin piece, that's fine with me too. I don't want to hog the podium or anything like that. Get plenty of opportunities to talk.
I'm good with you
days.
hogging the podium.
Yeah, and in fact, I'd like to nominate you to do that.
I was afraid of that.
I don't know, I like the idea of it coming from the chair. I
Yeah,
think
I do
that's
too.
the proper
Okay.
kind of voice, so.
And like Hillary said, it's just really a reiteration of our
Yeah.
memo.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys all okay with
And
that?
in- and in addition to that,
If you need a contingent, then I'll do one.
Okay,
I'll do
good.
McCaslin.
All right. Might need a wingman.
Well, whether it's a wingman or something happened with your schedule, because you're going to be
Good.
pulled in the service in other directions, so.
Yeah.
But we don't want to lose our place in line, so to speak.
Yeah, appreciate
And
that.
I'll likely speak as resident, so
Great.
I like how Hillary suggested that. so.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion.
For
Do we
me,
have any verbiage to indicate that there's going to be further funds requested? Is there any way that they can construe this as being 15,000 to do the job as opposed to 15,000 to get our feet wet and a sense of direction for a small area plan?
I'm sorry,
I don't know how, I'm
understand.
trying to anticipate how nitpicky somebody might be looking at this and how they interpret it. I mean, what I'm hearing is we need 15 grand to get this ball rolling.
Mhm.
We think we can do X, Y, Z with that money. then down the road, we're gonna need further funding to complete the small area plan.
Yeah, I like the paragraph. I was going to suggest that as well.
Yeah, that's probably good. It breaks it up.
We could
That'd be
either add an
approved.
also before recommends, or we could add an additional before funds. I don't know how you guys want to do it.
Additional before.
And can we
Yeah.
say budget
I would
rather
just
than
say
approve?
approve further funds or something.
Yeah, additional funds to budget.
Yeah, I
for
would
the
say the
entire-
town board to budget funds to cover the entire planning process related to development for 2018. We don't know what that number is yet.
I would say
mean,
development and completion of a Northwest Small Area Plan. So,
If we want to get it
Yeah,
done.
yeah, related, yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
No, but I want them to understand that,
completion.
Yeah.
you know, this is,
Agreed.
no one's saying it's just this, it
Yeah,
could be.
no, I like that. Yep, let's be abundantly clear
Yeah.
here, right, with what we're looking for. Yeah, I think that's a
Budget
good.
additional funds, correct, yeah. Anthony, did you have a comment? I think I was talking over you or somebody jumped in.
My comment was in relation to you presenting. I do like the idea with you, our board president, presenting that. In addition to that, I'm comfortable with the process that we've done here and feel like everyone's had some input into this. So I have no issue with one of our single members speaking, or one of our single commissioners speaking to this.
All right, thanks.
That last sentence, we're saying this may result, it feels like that could or should be a little bit stronger. I mean, we either feel like, as a commission,
This-
that it's important
yeah.
to bring in a consultant that can finish this plan, or we're not, rather than being wishy-washy about it. I mean, we could say, you know, the planning commission,
This would likely result in a more cohesive result.
well, or that the planning commission recommends that the initial consultant that facilitates public meetings
Yeah.
continue to and you can, and you can just, continue, you can just delete a few words there.
Oh, does it come up?
And I think
Okay.
you've started, just.
So we'd be looking at basically a land use planning firm.
Would,
yeah.
That has the ability to conduct
Yeah.
these kinds of focus groups, or for lack of a better term.
Yeah, that's what I'm envisioning. You
Okay.
know, we had a consultant come in for the latest comprehensive plan. I don't know that it's, a firm like that, or, others, I think. But yeah, that's what I envisioned in my mind, I guess.
And we could even soften it to say would likely, just in case we don't like them, and then we could choose,
Yeah.
rather than say should,
Yeah.
we could say would likely continue to lead the process. I mean, we may choose to not.
Well, if we don't like them, we
Right,
fire them.
well, yeah, I mean, if we
Yeah.
get through the process and we didn't like them, then
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
all right, give it a read through.
I suppose we gotta be, now I'm gonna be the cynical lawyer. All
All right.
I suppose we gotta be sensitive to the fact that we want the solicitation of community feedback to be as objective as possible and
Mhm.
unrelated to what the land use consultant can actually provide by way of services down the road. We want to hear from the community. We want the community to shape what this looks like. And then we want the right professional in place who can execute on that vision.
Which is why
Sure.
I think if the same consultant is on board, they'll hear that message. I think
Okay.
sometimes that doesn't translate through notes or summary.
Right.
But I think if you engage the right consultant up front that participates in that process, they're more likely to carry that vision forward.
Okay.
I would agree with that. It's kind of what we've been talking about during this process, which is we will explain to them what we want as opposed to having them explain to us what we should do.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
not what we
Yeah.
want.
I wish I could have said it.
And that needs to be really clear.
Mhm.
We'll let Anthony have that discussion.
Yeah, exactly. He's in charge of that one.
Bring a big stick.
Do you want to read through it now? Sorry.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure.
Thanks, Steve.
Am I missing a space?
Where? Oh, right here, sorry.
Yeah.
You're way ahead of me.
She wrote it, so she's
Yeah, yeah.
probably quite ahead of us.
Just committed it to memory.
Are we gonna change the recommendation note date to today?
Well, we passed that on that date, that
Yeah, the
quotes, the section in quotes in italics. That's the
Okay.
language, we approved that,
Okay.
passed tonight,
Okay.
but. Yeah, and read that, I just read it out of the minutes.
Okay. What do you think, folks?
I think that's sufficient notice for them to know what they're spending their money on.
Yeah.
On to second item.
Do we need to
Oh.
vote on these, or are we just discussing them?
I think if that one's finished, then by motion, you could direct staff to put it in the right format.
Yeah, and that format, when we get these, we were talking about putting these in a pretty typical format.
Yeah, with the town logo, I meant to do that, and I just didn't have, the
n-
right computer with the.
And do you typically make a recommendation when you put these together?
We won't be. We'll
Okay.
just put it together for you. Yeah, it's coming just from you.
Can we go back to it?
Yep.
Then? Sorry. Go back to the top.
So it'll get like the to town board from planning commission.
Correct.
Date, blah, blah, blah.
Memo. Yep.
Where do we ask for the
Okay.
15K?
Second to last paragraph. So I was.
So do we need to say we recommend the approval of the, I mean, if a staff member were coming to us, there was a recommendation in there, and a staff's not going to put a recommendation in there, then we should put a recommendation in the record. There's always, I mean, when
So
I think
I
about
see what
the
you're
staff
saying,
memo
right?
formats,
So, yeah.
it'd be a
I mean,
recommendation from planning commission, approve
So
$15,000.
similar to what you've done
and-
here.
Right, this,
Yeah.
this draft was taken off of samples that Martin had provided to me where I think it was OSAC or ProStack had made some recommendations.
Mhm.
We could, I don't know, we could maybe just, Stephen, could we just, direct in the motion that you?
Yeah, I mean, I can do it now
format
too.
accordingly?
I mean, we can just pull over these headers. We're going to want to formalize us into one memo and then have, I guess parts 1 and 2 type of broken out, where we just say that this is, and you guys will need to clarify how you want it, whether or not you want the McCaslin item as number 1 or if you care what the order is. But we'll put those 2 items on there and then we'll put them in one memo and then we'll probably have the commission recommendation be at the bottom. That's how, so it'll be comprehensive of both. So you have background on both and then a commission recommendation on both items. And we can kind of break that up into, on item 1 and then item 2 if we want, but that's typically how those memos are organized.
And do they have to pass a resolution or to do that? How do that, what's the approval?
The board likely won't take action tomorrow at the meeting. They're simply hearing your request. I mean, if they want to act on it, then that would be part of the budget process.
It's not clear, yeah. That's not how it's, yeah.
I'm going to need to have a conversation with somebody. This was sent already to them so that they could have discussed it and thought about it so that it could be discussed and approved on August 14th. So why would this not be an item? I mean, we've been talking about this for months, so I'm getting a little frustrated here. I thought
Well,
that the point of August 14th
I could be
was.
misspeaking, but I don't know how it's going to be agendized. I don't know that it's going to be an action item.
Then I'd like to understand as a planning commissioner what the process is to get something in front of the board that they are going to act on, because I honestly thought that's what was going to happen on August 14th, that action to be taken. What has to happen in order for the board to take action, or do they just decide not take action? I mean, this is what we were discussing at the last meeting, and one of our residents got up here, and nobody knows what's supposed to happen. And if something doesn't happen, then what happens? That's what we were trying to get clear at the last meeting. So what happens? Why?
So it's really up to the board to decide when they want to take action. If they want to take action on the $15,000 approval of the, you kind of more immediate, looking at the one that we just discussed, if they want to take action on the kind of the low-hanging fruit as you guys discussed it, I think that's probably something they may feel comfortable in that meeting taking action on. I don't know that they're going to spend, commit to $1 million roundabout or to a $100,000 study for the Northwest Area Plan at that meeting. I don't know. I mean, that.
No, I certainly don't want these things lumped together in such a way that it all gets denied either. So.
Well, but I mean, I think that what the context is that the board has to consider a budget for 2018, and they consider that over several months in, beginning next month through November, and that's where larger ticket items are kind of vetted out. So you guys are putting this in front of them to include in that budget discussion, and that's how the process has worked historically. So I don't know that, they're going to feel comfortable with $100,000 over one meeting discussion, or they're going to take longer. That's up to them. So that's why it's hard for staff to tell you when they're not going to make a decision on something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm puzzled, Hillary, by why your initial reaction was they probably won't take action. Is there a reason that they would not take action? What?
No.
Why was that your initial reaction?
Because I have the maybe inaccurate idea in my head that this is the Planning Commission's presentation to the board, and that doesn't typically result in the board taking action. And maybe it's all how it's agendized. I mean, I don't know that the agenda's been prepared yet.
And that's what I'm trying to understand is how do you put things in front of the board to request action be taken? I mean, I would like to request that action be taken. I understand that they don't have to. They're the board. They get to do what they want. But we need to make a recommendation that they take action on these items. That action might be we're not going to take action.
But I think that's
to
what we're doing.
Be told that
right?
it's going to be discussed.
Yeah.
And, I mean, God, these commissions, they must be frustrated as hell. This is nuts.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are doing all that we can and all that we're supposed to do. Let's just back up. We met with the board in the context of the work sessions. We said, listen, this is what we want to achieve in development of a work plan. We've got the go-ahead to do that. Then we set about the task of trying to implement a process to get that done. I think now that we get to the recommendations, I guess personally I would be really disappointed if we don't get action on the $15,000 request and then the low-hanging fruit issue on McCaslin. I think the budgeting for 2018, to Stephen's point, I understand. That's going to be something that'll be kind of an ongoing discussion.
Understood. And the $1 million roundabout? Sure.
Yeah.
Then these need, so I'm very uncomfortable with something at the bottom saying Planning Commission recommendations. I think these should be 4 individual recommendations for action to be taken so that they can either take action or not take action. 15K, yes, no, we're not going to take action. Low-hanging fruit, yes, no, we're not going to take action. Bump. And not lump these together into some big recommendation, because I agree.
I'm against lumping them together as well. I don't want one to affect the other. It should be reviewed independently and decided independently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is that all right to have them separate?
And I don't want to have some sort of a backdoor excuse for not taking action or something abbreviated,
And I think we should request that action be taken. I mean, definitely on the two items that, you know, we're looking for action to be taken. What they do, I mean, and I guess we just go ahead and do all four, knowing it's very likely that they won't take action on $1 million roundabout or you know, maybe they'll budget for the $100,000 next year, maybe they won't. It's hard to say.
But does that get back then to how we put it on the agenda, that instead of, I think like Hillary said, it's not a presentation, we're asking for we're asking for approval, or, I mean, it seems like the agenda should say we want action. It seems like it should be worded differently than just a presentation.
Well, yeah, we gave them our recommendation, and they've seen it in the minutes, and they know this is forthcoming, so
Right.
to think that this would actually get delayed yet another meeting is just baffling to me.
We're looking for approval, we're looking for a,
Recommendation,
Or action.
request for action.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, no, or
And
we're
that's
not
what
gonna
should be on the
decide.
agenda. That's what should be on the agenda, not a presentation from the planning commission, because we're giving it to them. We're not really going to do a
We're not
presentation.
gonna get up there and do a
No.
presentation.
We
no.
thought we gave it to them before this
Right.
document
That's what I
was
thought, that's what I
created.
thought.
Right.
We're only creating this now in response to the fact that what we thought was gonna happen didn't.
Right.
So
Well,
this was-
to be clear, I mean, do we just put in here, and I'd be happy to deliver the message to the board, I mean, these are recommendations and these are requests for action,
Yep.
you know? It's not just an advisory
Yes.
thing, even though that is to some degree our role, but,
Yep.
you know, we've actually we've done the heavy lifting that we promised we would do.
Right.
And now we're going to turn it over for them to act.
Well,
So
I'd like to add just for a moment that you recall the conversation we had with Hillary, that the planning commission making these kind of recommendations to the board is kind of fish swimming upstream.
Mhm.
It's not the normal process. That's what I think she's alluding to. And so whether the board takes action on it is the board's decision. We can ask them, we can present it to them, Jim can pitch it to them. If they say we're not going to do anything with it, they're not going to do anything with it.
I
It's not,
I agree with
we
what you're
have
saying.
no power over that. All we can do is what we're doing.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I agree.
We
with-
can push to do some other things too. And I'm
I agree.
gonna keep
I
doing
agree.
that.
That's
so.
what we're doing, is pushing.
I'm pushing because
Well,
this is not fair to the citizens and the commissions and the committees that sit here and try to get stuff done in this town. It's
Let's
get
not
on the high
forget-
horse here, but yeah.
Let's not forget that the board has been a part of this process from the beginning, you know, in
Yeah.
helping us
Yes.
as a commission to identify the items we wanted to put on the 2017 work plan and encouraging us to be proactive in going out and coming up with proposed solutions to those items. I mean, maybe I'm naive, but I think the board would be open to hearing what conclusions did we reach? How did we reach them, and what do we want them to do? I think that's what we heard them saying.
That last thing you said is what's most important, if we present something to them as a presentation for them to discuss and talk about for the next 3 months, they're going to discuss and talk about it for the next 3 months. That's not what we're doing.
We want a
It's not.
decision.
I want something from us going to the board for this meeting and this agenda item that says, this is what we are expecting to happen tonight. I understand they can do I get it, they can do what they want to do, that's absolutely, but this needs to come through in a format that says, we're expecting action tonight, that's what, I mean.
Well, Stephen, can we go to the bottom of this to see what we have for a recommendation? We recommended town board spend.
I think this is yours, so I don't want to influence it, but I think you have the background here, and then what you need to do is, we need to, put in backgrounds for both topics, and then if you want to do some sort of intro to kind of introduce both of them or add a paragraph, you could, but then what this is needing is what Jim has in his draft, which is, detailed commission recommendation, and you can break this out into agenda items 1 and 2, or however you want to do it, or
Or that single paragraph that we already sent to them, right?
I mean, you have it summarized, you just need to spell it out in this type of format, I think.
I like that, just taking your heading, the commission recommendation, and then we phrase it a little more strongly. Planning commission unanimously recommends the town board direct staff to, allocate or to, spend funds. I mean, this is within their policy, that
Right.
they can spend this amount of money, this 15,000. So if we can tweak it that way, I think your language is more firm. Do we need to do that tonight, or do you?
I think, I mean, the direction I've had so far is this should come from you, so I mean, I'm happy to paste one into the
Okay.
other, and then we can,
Okay.
you know, and work it out if you want, so.
Commissioner Ritchie, can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
This is something I haven't understood, and maybe it's been discussed when I wasn't here, but is there an identified pot of money where this 15,000 comes from?
No, just understanding the town's purchasing policy. It's
Okay.
kind of under the manager's
But
discretion.
understand that the board is limited to only
Yes.
spending money that's appropriated, so
Correct.
this may not be something that they can pull 15K out of thin air. It has
I
to come
recognize
from
that,
an
but I also,
identified.
yeah, no, I totally recognize that, but I watch them spend money on all sorts of things that come
Seen
up.
many
But those-
$20,000 expenditures that
Those-
just got spent on.
Those could be appropriated, though. I mean, maybe staff
I know
knows
of one
better
that
than
wasn't, but,
Okay.
no, well, so anyway, yeah.
No, not trying to be cynical.
No.
I completely understand where you're coming from. It's not allocated, which I think is why we have run into so many problems in this, is that we don't have funds allocated for this project. Therefore, we don't have resources, which I think comes back to why we're requesting it.
Yeah.
I think it's important to acknowledge the second part of your response to that. It falls under the manager's authority to be able to approve something like that. Am I mistaken there, or?
Well, so the purchasing policies are premised on already having an appropriation. If there's a pot of money identified, and then the manager has the authority of up to, say, 15, or I don't know what the actual limit is, then the manager can approve it, but the manager can't, of his own, create a new spending priority and approve it. I mean, the budget initially comes from the town board and needs to be approved by the town board. A lot of places will have, maybe this is, I don't know if this is what staff does here, but before bringing an item to the board, identifies which line item this comes from. You know, we're asking for $15,000 from this line item of the budget, which we have set aside, you know, I don't know how much for planning, or I don't know how much, you know, it could come from a department's budget, it could come from a project budget, but I'm not aware that there is such a budget. And that could be my lack of knowing, or it could be that there really isn't. I just don't know.
That may create, oh, I'm sorry.
To clarify, though, the manager does not have discretion to pull $15,000 from a certain
nowhere? No.
budget? No, from a specific budget that's already been approved, that
Well,
may or may not have been
if this
used.
fits that approved item, if there's an approved budget item that arguably Northwest Planning fits into, then maybe, but I'm just not familiar enough with the budget to know.
Yeah.
To what extent, Hillary, is that, I mean, kind of the job of the staff to figure out where to find that
Sure,
money?
and I think if the board approves a $15,000 expenditure, or approves of the idea of a $15,000 expenditure, then staff can certainly take pencil to paper and figure out where it comes from, but it probably comes from, I mean, there's not a subtraction without, you know, there's not an addition here without a subtraction somewhere else. So
Right.
that would be staff's job, but they would first need direction from the board to make that happen. And maybe that's your request, is that,
Direct the staff to find $15,000
Right.
to spend. I think that's really what we're saying
I think
is,
so. I think that's
you know,
very, yeah.
get it done, just, you know, find the money and issue the RFP, and let's get it going. And, you know, I'm not an expert on town budgeting by any stretch, but I know that there are projects that are budgeted for that don't go forward. And, you know, there's an extra theoretic sum of money there that could be tapped. And I think, and I could be wrong, tell me if I am, Hillary, but I think our town manager and his staff has the discretion to look at that and come back to the board and say, I can find money from here that hasn't been spent and won't be spent during this budget year.
Sure.
And
sure, and those types of things, depending on the dollar amount, might require a budget amendment, but it's all stuff that can be done if there's will to do it. I think what you are lacking at this point is a pronouncement of the will from the body that has that kind of spending authority.
Yes.
which is the board.
Yes.
So what we're saying to the board is we recommend and request that you direct staff to find up to $15,000 to engage a consultant to execute on the community outreach program that we've described. Is that kind of what we're getting to?
I'd almost like to say, is that exactly the wording we should be using, or should we just say approve? I mean, I mean, do we know the process well enough to use those words, or is that, and that's probably a question for Hillary, are those the proper words to use, or should we just say approve?
I think either way works.
Would use both approve and allocate.
Yeah, or approve and allocate.
I think what's helpful for you for background is understanding that there is a process and that they can't make it happen necessarily on the 14th. So that's more for your own understanding and background information than for what needs to go in your actual request.
And I think we're all comfortable with that. I think what I'm hearing is that we have to find a way for our board to have the same passion about
Yeah.
these issues that we have, and then get that understanding so that it doesn't get bogged down and, take
Semantics.
6 months.
Well, I know many of them
to
do. That
implement.
They do. Yeah,
They do.
I agree with you, Anthony.
But if they're not, if it's not clear that they're being asked to approve that money, I mean, something needs to be clear. I mean, the public, I want the public to see this in the agenda. I want everybody in Northwest Superior who's paying attention to look at this and say, the Planning Commission is recommending action be taken on approving $15,000 for the purpose of blah, 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 blah. So when they come in here, that's what they know that we're asking for. That's what their expectation of the board is. And if it doesn't get done, it's not because the Planning Commission didn't request action be taken, right? That's.
And see, based on the constraints that we have as a planning commission, I think that the wording and the language that we're using in this recommendation is sufficient. That's just my opinion. I don't know that we can tell them what to do. I don't know if it would have a greater impact.
Yeah, I don't know if
we-
wordsmithing it.
Exactly. If it had a greater impact, if we are more assertive, or, if we go in and say, this is our recommendation. This is something that we've been working on for months, and it sure would like, I sure would like to get it on the table, at least, and have it looked at. And for me, that's okay, because, what I'm hearing is that there is the possibility that they could take action. The likelihood is that they will not, but the following meeting, we have to make sure that it remains a hot agenda item topic, so that it just doesn't die.
So then when do they take action? When do we recommend they take action? Seriously, I mean,
I think at the end of the day, though.
Is it going to get on the next agenda if they don't take
You're
action?
putting the ball in their court.
Yeah, that's just it. I think at some point, if the board is not interested in doing this,
Then they need to say so. That's
Then
all
they-
I'm saying. I'm
yeah.
not saying they need to say yes tomorrow night.
Right.
Or on August 14th, or that they have to say no, but they have to say yes, no, or no, we're not going to take action.
but I don't know that we can force them to do that.
We can ask them to.
Sure.
We can be clear in our recommendation that
Yeah.
we are expecting this to happen. I'm not okay with being soft and letting this sit on there and flutter by through the meeting and nothing happen. I mean, you got to give the public the power to stand up and public comment and say, we're asking this of you, and we're asking you to make a decision tonight, yes, no, or we're not going to deal with this now. If you're not going to deal with it now, then it comes off our plate, we go on to McCaslin, we go on to whatever other work plan item we have, and we move on, and we know, and then we can let the public come up here and scream at them for the next 3 or 4 meetings, right? But we have to be clear that they're being asked to take action, as crystal clear as we can be, for the public's sake, right? I mean, that's why we're sitting up here, right? So that they know that this commission's sitting here making a recommendation, and if they don't take action at all, and they just flutter it away, then the public knows that they didn't do that. It wasn't because it wasn't clearly asked for by the commission that's here working on it.
I don't think
That's all.
anybody could ever look back at the planning commission and say, we
No.
weren't taking this particular topic very seriously. When you look at the amount of work we've devoted to this, the board hopefully has been paying
Absolutely.
attention to all of the minutes that they've seen.
I think they have.
All of the work
Right, all
sessions,
of the
I
work
think they have,
sessions
yeah.
that we've had.
But that's not my concern. My concern is the public, the line item, the recommendation in the agenda that the public gets has a clear statement of a recommendation by the planning commission. That's all I'm saying.
Mhm.
And
No, and we
And
can
I
add,
think-
yeah.
yeah, if we
think
could
Bob
take what,
raises a good
what
point.
you
I
were
mean-
doing, just recommendation,
I would see recommendation and request by the planning commission for action on the following items.
yeah, tonight.
Northwest Superior
Yep.
and McCaslin Corridor.
And we're requesting, we can't tell them what to do, but we can certainly request it. So.
Well, and
you know.
I think we've tried to be thoughtful in our approach so as not to request action that's going to be outrageously expensive, knowing that there's no way to budget for that during this year. For example, that's the low-hanging fruit concept
And the initial
consultant.
phase of the consultant.
Right.
With
But then
expert-
also
yeah.
to get that on the radar screen so that they're thinking about a roundabout, and they're
Right.
thinking about future land use planning.
Yes.
And reminded that a lot of this stuff is not new,
Mhm.
No.
Mhm.
especially when you come to the McCaslin things.
Mhm. It's been around for a long time.
That's right, and maybe a reminder of that
Well,
can exist in the drafting of it.
I guess, Hillary, Stephen, if you think it would be better for us to wordsmith the recommendation a bit, to say we recommend and request, or we want to be crystal clear on this, happy to do that. I'm happy to articulate it verbally when we, have a chance to talk with the board about what it is we're getting at here. Whatever you think is going to be most effective.
I'm not sure that the words matter as much as conveying the passion, and maybe conveying the passion happens in your individual capacities
Mhm.
when you come up for public comment prior to this agenda item.
And the only reason I think the words matter is because the public's going to read the agenda. I agree. How they look at it's one thing, but how the public views the agenda and what their expectation is when they come to the meeting, that's the only reason I think the words are important. And if we put the recommendation at the top with the background below it, and it's right there at the top, recommendation, Planning Commission requests or recommends and requests the approval of $15,000 this evening for the purpose of blah, 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 blah. Next one, McCaslin Boulevard, recommendation, boom. Roundabout, recommendation, budget for next year, 100 grand, whatever. for
So I want to
plan.
clarify something before we go too far down a path here. So what planning commission is drafting is this memo. The town manager will draft the agenda, and it'll be drafted out however he sees fit. So whether or not it's construed as an action item or it's construed as an agenda item, that's up to him, and that's going to follow the process that I understand got set back in 2012 for all the advisory committees, including planning commission. So how that agenda looks is up to the town manager, and that's following standard process. We don't necessarily have an influence on that it's going to say action requested or, anything like that. This is your opportunity to, draft. This is your memo. So this is your opportunity to influence how something's wordsmithed. Your opportunity at those meetings is to clarify, either in public comment or, when you do your presentation, you received our memo. These are, I guess I foresee you guys summarizing your recommendations,
Are you saying this could get changed?
No, I'm not
No.
saying this will get
No, no.
changed.
The
I'm saying that the
agenda
actual,
item.
so you're using the word agenda, and the agenda that gets drafted comes from the town manager. So that's like the summary of what that meeting's gonna be, just like the summary for our meeting is drafted. So, if you're saying that you want the memo to read in a certain way, then that's totally within your purview. But if you're
That's all
saying
I'm
that you
talking
wanna
about, yeah.
change the agenda, so, okay. So
I
the
am
memo
trusting
is-
that there's going to be an agenda item
Correct.
for
Correct, for this,
stuff.
yes. And
Whatever it is you
different-
guys do.
Correct, and it is different than the agenda items or the minutes that have been related
Sure.
in the past.
It's
So
gonna
that
be an
it
item.
is more substantive. So
Right.
you guys have a certain time slot and a certain agenda item, as does two other committees, as far as I understand it, for that August 14th meeting. So you're going to have your time to present this to the board, and whether or not they take action or how much discussion, you may avail yourself for questions, however you want to do it, but I don't know how that's going to, that's really up to them. So that's what's hard for staff to respond, is how much discussion or what kind of action or whatever comes up from that meeting, I can't predict.
So indulge me for a moment.
Uh-huh.
So let's assume that the agenda comes out and it doesn't reflect what we intend this to be, what we intend these items to be. And perhaps Matt didn't know we want action on this, or whatever the reason, what remedy or recourse do we have? I mean, do I stand up in front of the town board and say, I want to correct this agenda item because it doesn't reflect what your planning commission is saying?
As been said, the agenda is set by the town manager. I mean, he takes his cues from a lot of places. I mean, if something comes from the board or he hears from board members that something should be an action item, that might impact it. Hearing from you all prior might impact it, but you don't have the authority to determine how things are agendized or whether they're agendized. And the fact that you have an agenda spot shows that you've gotten somebody's attention. But ultimately the direction to make something an action item, would need to come from the town manager or the board itself. So maybe a scenario for the 14th is that board receives the recommendation and then directs that it be an action item for a subsequent meeting.
Could we request that the town manager place this on the agenda as an action item?
You don't have that authority.
It's a request.
We can't
We
even
can't
ask.
You
simply
can
say,
ask.
I'm a citizen of this
Sure,
town, and I request that you put this on the agenda as an action item.
sure. He doesn't have to accommodate that.
No, I know, but I mean, I think that would be relevant.
Mhm.
Nobody with authority has to do anything. We can ask whatever the heck we want to. I mean, there's
But what type of, I mean, Stephen, what type of input do you go back after these meetings to talk to the town manager and say, hey, I just had a riled up planning commission here talking about this, and they're having trouble understanding the process, and the process doesn't seem efficient. We've had it was
I think it's
embarrassing.
gonna-
Well, it was embarrassing at the last meeting when the town citizens stood up here and said, you guys don't have a process, and I don't know how this works. It was I left here embarrassed.
Oh, I did,
at
yeah.
what they
It's
said.
insane.
And I still, and today I'm in the same spot. It's amazing to me that the town manager can have this authority, and I get that he probably has that authority, but that there's not taking input from this. I know we're just an advisory commission, but we've been talking about this now for 2 months, 3 months.
where's the
and-
responsibility?
Yeah, I mean, someone's got to be accountable and responsible for it. And for us to make this suggestion, say that we maybe have to call them separately or do that, it seems like that's what you guys should do as the staff, should be telling him, hey, this is pretty important to these guys.
And
Well, it's a
I do-
work plan
and I will,
item that the
you know.
board approved. This is a board-approved work plan item, and we can't get a simple answer, yes, no, or we're not going to take action, because we can't put it on the agenda to say we want that answer. We're ready for the answer. And that is just stupid. I'm sorry. There's no other word for it. It's a work plan item approved by the board, worked on by the commission, and we've asked to put it on the agenda so that action can be taken. And that could be no action, that could be yes, that could be no, right? But they can just let it flutter by at this next meeting and not do anything, and everybody walk away and go, well, what the hell do we do next? And that's wrong. That's the piece of responsibility that's missing.
Stephen, you were going to
Sorry.
I appreciate everyone's frustration, and I mean.
And I'd like Matt to listen to this, please. If you'd ask him to listen to this conversation,
I
I
will.
would be grateful. I'll ask him too, but.
Okay, I will clarify the conversation to both Martin and Matt, but, and I don't know how to say it too much differently than how I've said it already.
I understand.
And it's, we don't know what the board's gonna say or what the board's direction is gonna be. And the board's direction in 2012 was for this process to get recommendations to them. So when they direct Matt to make it an agenda item or an action item is when, and they directed it at that meeting. So you guys I think this is part of the process. And I know it's slow, and sometimes these processes are a little slow. So I appreciate your frustration. I want you to understand that I'm working to get it to where it needs to be, and we haven't gone through this process together yet, so.
I don't think anybody's frustrated with you
No, and
or
it's
with
fine.
Hillary.
Even if
or-
you are, that's fine
No,
too. But
it's
I
frustration
just
over
want to
not
clarify
knowing,
that,
not understanding what's going on.
I do think we're following this process, and I don't necessarily know that the process is broken yet.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of frustration, and we haven't even had this meeting yet. So the meeting may very well approve some of the low-hanging fruit, or all of the low-hanging fruit, or nothing. And then if it approves nothing, then we can be frustrated and work towards, getting those items on the agenda,
And-
like for action.
And not to put too fine a point on it, but I think what we're trying to articulate is that we understand that it's the board's prerogative to ignore our recommendations or reject our request. But what I think we're having difficulty with is this notion that we can't get to our board, you know.
I think
and-
you're getting to your board on the 14th, and I think that they have, they have some purview to make decisions that night if they choose to. They may not feel comfortable with that, and that's why it's tough for us to tell you. I mean, we're just trying to be, realistic with what the recommendation will be when we have no idea, where they are on this, because this is the first time we've really discussed it. Sure, they said this is your work plan, and we approve your work plan. These all sound like good ideas for you to explore. Spending money on it, actually hiring a consultant, those are all different questions. So,
Right.
those are, it's hard for me to predict what they're gonna say, but I do think, and I haven't gone through this process yet, but I do think they have some purview to make action that night if they choose to. I don't know that they will, and if they don't, then I think that's when you guys, your responses are, or you're even to preface it ahead of time before they bring up the discussion, is that we're expecting or we're hoping for action tonight on these items, and we're hoping for consideration on these items when you consider the budget for 2018, and then, and if you don't, and these need to be action items for the meetings, tell us what information you need to provide to help you make a decision. That's the conversation that we're just now starting to get to have with them directly, and I think that it could be an iterative process, but it also could lead to some results on the 14th. So I don't want everyone to get real worked up and think that nothing's going to happen on the 14th, because we haven't had that happen yet, so.
Can I also take a minute to clarify what might be a misconception? And I think we have new commissioners since the training in February, but this is not an advisory committee. The Planning Commission has statutory duties, code duties. You don't actually have duties to advise. And that might be where some of the frustration is coming. Fair point that the work plan was approved, but arguably the work plan was too broad. Arguably the work plan authorized this body to do something that it doesn't have the code or statutory authority to do. And so that may be a matter that we need to address in future years, is that the work plan needs to be tailored to what you actually have authority to do.
But Hillary, shouldn't that have been brought to the forefront when the board developed the work plan with us? And the reason I say that is because I think of the countless nights that this commission has taken away from our families to sit here and work through these issues.
And in fairness, I don't think anybody anticipated that the work plan would be an issue. I mean, often in these types of situations, or in life in general, you don't know something's a problem until until it presents itself as a problem. And that's not, I don't mean to make this a negative, but I don't think anybody understood the implications of the work plan and the real drive and ambition of the Planning Commission at that point of approving the work plan. And it's now several months later, and you have invested all those hours, and you are expecting a response and a result, and that might be an unintended consequence.
Well, see, I beg to differ with you, because we engaged ad nauseum with the Board of Trustees on this topic, and not only were they very focused on these issues as we were, they were very focused on encouraging us to take this initiative and be proactive and do the heavy lifting that we've done. And I think what you're hearing, the frustration that you're hearing, is you got a lot of folks who have invested a lot of time in this, and time is money, and now we don't want to be stymied because there's some quirky little nuance that we hadn't anticipated, like a town manager not properly framing something as an agenda.
No, I think if you are correct in your assessment that there's board will, then you will be pleased with the result on the 14th. I mean, it really all ultimately comes down to what the board is willing and interested in to do. Okay. It's not going to be a procedural hiccup because you missed a word in your recommendation. I mean, it's going to be if there's board will behind this, and they'll find ways to make it happen.
Okay. Final question from me. May we, as a commission, simply request that this be put on the agenda as an action item? I mean, if Matt doesn't want to do it, he didn't want to, that's fine. But I think we ought to be able to say, we want you to put this on the agenda as an action item, because we're ready for action.
Sure, and I think the best way to do that is just to ask Stephen to convey that. And there's not a formal, agenda request form.
Would it need a resolution? Like, what additional work would need to accompany that?
In order for it to be an action item?
Mhm.
Yeah, it would need a resolution. I mean, it would need,
So then, that's what I'm saying, like,
Yeah.
what in addition would either us have to prepare or staff would need to prepare to get this, to take it from a discussion to action item?
right. It would require a resolution or a motion or something that, and staff prepares those
Mhm.
with direction, so that direction hasn't come about yet.
So it's a
let me-
catch-22.
Well, let me-
No, I think it can
Okay.
happen after the 14th.
Okay.
So if we get to the end of job here with the wordsmithing, would it make sense, given what you're hearing, for me to ask for a motion from the commission directing or requesting that the town manager place this on the August 14th agenda as action items?
You could certainly do that.
Does it need to be formal, or is asking Stephen sufficient?
I don't know how to answer this differently, but I'll kind of restate it and see whether or not it's any more clear. But in 2012, so it's not Matt's necessarily purview or decision. He's following the direction that the board gave him back in 2012, as I understand it. I
He was
wasn't here.
vested with discretion, but
He
we're
was-
asking him to exercise his discretion in such a way so as to place it on the agenda as an action item.
So what maybe I haven't clarified is that in 2012, so for all the advisory committees, and the planning commission was lumped into them, and so that's one of the nuances, I guess, is whether or not planning commission should really be an advisory committee. But planning commission and all the other advisory committees, this is how this process works. And he puts them on as an agenda item, not as an action item. So I don't know that Matt's gonna move on that direction. That's historically what the process has been. And unless he has other direction from the board, I don't know that process is gonna change. So I'm not here to recommend you guys do this or that. I'm just here to tell you what the process has been. So, I think you have the option to try to make this an action item and make a recommendation that this be an action item. You also have the option to see how the meeting goes on the 14th, and if you don't get the results you want, to follow up with how do we change the process so that we can make, get these items as action items, or how do we clarify to you that we want, how do you tell us or get these as action items? And when I say you, that you're talking to the board. So how does the board make these action items for them to vote on? Because you want that done. So I think that's just what you want to clarify, is that if these items don't decide, we expect them to be decided tonight. That's your expectation. That's pretty clear from this discussion. And if they're not, then when and how? And, that's what we need to get clarified. So, but that's the process. And I'm not sure that you're not going to get some of these things, you're not going to get direction on some of these things on the 14th.
All right, well, that's helpful, Stephen. And again,
No,
we're not frustrated with you
I
or with
understand.
Hillary, okay?
Yeah.
This
It's
is
the
not,
process.
this is
I
just
understand.
business, but, I think where we're coming from is, we want action.
I understand.
That's the bottom line. All right.
And even if action is inaction, the verbal inaction, that's fine too. So I'd say let's do the recommendation similar to what you did in your memo. Making it clear that we're requesting action be taken on this at tonight's meeting, and at least for the two items we feel confident could be done, and then make recommendations that the budget be, that the two larger items be addressed in, go for the 2018 budget. Don't know if the roundabout will make it, but that's a big one, but let's ask. Let's make the recommendation.
I agree. I think
Let's do
that's
it.
where
Yeah.
we're at.
Can we go back to the Northwest Superior memo?
Sure.
Do we need to adjust that? We want the
Yeah, well,
recommendation at the top?
why don't we do you want to finalize what you want this to
Swell through
look
this.
like, and then we'll make the other one look like this?
Okay.
Is that
So
cool?
it's going to be one document. I did paste it over. Right now, it's Jim's beginning.
It's one
And then-
document because it's one agenda item, right? At
Correct.
the moment, okay.
And it will, so you can change, see the font changes here. So this is the background that Jim provided, and then this is what I consider, I guess, the background for the other item, and then we have commission recommendations. So however you want to format this, let me know, and then we can add the recommendation that's specific to this agenda item underneath here is how I see it being kind of organized. But if you feel differently, then just let me know.
And can we have these as two separate items instead of one document?
You have one agenda item, so I think it's one memo. That was the recommendation that came from Martin to Jim and that
Okay.
email.
So we have one spot to make 2 points.
You have one memo, but it can be,
To
I
deal
mean, I
with
don't
two
know
items.
what difference it makes. It can
And
be-
multiple recommendations,
Yeah.
probably 5. No, more than that. Right, 1, 2, 3,
Okay.
4, 5, 6 recommendations-ish, something like that. 4 for McCaslin.
So
or-
if you want to wordsmith this to include both and then add a separate header down here and then kind of, clarify, just follow the same format that Jim provided, we can do that. I don't know, however you want to do it, or if you just want to keep them a little distinct, that's fine too.
I guess if we're gonna do it all in one, I would suggest we probably caption this McCaslin Corridor,
Mm-hmm.
and then caption the other one, Northwest Superior.
Yes.
I don't know what we're calling it, the
Small
small
area
area
plan.
plan.
Northwest Superior, small area plan.
I think Northwest Superior is probably fine, right? Because this is if McCaslin Corridor,
Yeah, Northwest Superior, yeah.
Yeah. I like the abbreviation NSW.
Just I don't like typing more than I have to.
Stephen, on those, I had a few exhibits. I can put those together for you if you like, whatever's easiest for you, just let me know. I know a good paralegal, so.
That'd be great.
Would you like me to get you those?
If you can get them to me, that'd be great. If not, I can dig them up too, I'm sure. I mean, I
I can
read
do
through
it.
it today and I assume it's, what I understood is it's all documents from us, so.
That's what we're doing.
Okay.
You want, yeah, because you've got some changes you want to make there, right?
Yeah, I had changed the preface or introduction.
Yeah. So maybe
On
once he
McCaslin?
gets,
Yeah.
once he gets through with that, let's turn back to McCaslin and get your
So-
minutes.
I mean, I don't know if you want this as a header above all this, because it's
See,
all,
Well, yeah.
How do you
I
wanna-
guess.
I think it might be a good idea to remind the board that we have a work plan, right? Like, was your intent, like?
That was my intent, is
Yeah.
that this was
So is
what
this
we
work
were
plan,
tasked
work
with
plan
doing.
item recommendations?
Yeah.
Approved
Yeah.
Approved work plan.
Yeah.
Can I read my draft of the introduction?
Yeah, so Bob had some changes here.
I had done this basically with McCaslin in mind, but it should be readily expandable. The introduction to it is a heading called Introduction. Excuse me. By way of preliminary comment, the Planning Commission 2017 work plan is on three core topics. Northwest Superior NWS, and both McCaslin and 88th Street corridors. Pursuant to the Board of Trustees' approval of said work plan, and I'd like to interject something along the lines, and repeated encouragement to pursue these. The PC has conducted several meetings and numerous work sessions. As of this date, the PC will have submitted separate formal requests for approval of its recommendations related to McCaslin Corridor and NWS. Parentheses, recommendations regarding 88th should be considered as deferred pending completion of a PC evaluation. So that's how it sits right now. I think it should be expanded to refer to a lot of the encouragement that we have all heard. Well, thank you so much. Over these past 7-8 months. So you hear things like, we should have given this to you earlier, you've got a green light, go for it, all these kinds of things. Well, obviously, we can't put all of those in there. That's why we just say, put in something along the lines of, and repeated encouragement. Because I want them to know that we relied upon that in a sense. in terms of devoting our time and passion to the project. And they are responsible for what they see in front of them in a way, because they basically said, go for it, and we took them at their word,
Yeah.
all 9 of us. Then the rest of it, I had sent you all an email where I attempted to reformat, and really what that boils down to is one of the, if not the most important things that Jim had done, was to go through and research and put in basically the past history related to McCaslin, referencing a transportation plan, transportation update plan, blah, blah, blah. And so as, in a sense, if you wanted to boil this down to math, it's sort of like, well, it's been 5 years since it was mentioned, it's been 5 years since it was studied, it's been 3.5 years since it was recommended, da-da-da-da-da, the inference being, and here we are again. How we want to actually express that particular thought, that's a different issue, but that's essentially the point. And what we're trying to do is get them to make some action, because they've been dancing around some of these issues for years, and, allowing them to continue is a red flag for the future. And it's gonna create problems, because you have to deal with change, accelerated traffic, accelerated development, et cetera, et cetera. There are all these factors that have been going on in the backstory as they consider these things for a transportation plan. And I think that has, and Jim did so, I just think it has to be laid out with a couple of headings. And I can sit down with you anytime you want in the next 24, 48 hours and take you through the headings. And I sent you a copy of the email that basically shows the first half of what I had started to do. I had a different kind of computer problem.
Well, I think we need to do this tonight.
We have to do it.
We
Fine.
we have to finish it tonight,
Fine.
so.
Yeah.
I started for approximately the first half of the formatting and basically giving it, in terms of Roman numeral 1A, A1, A2, that kind of stuff. You break it down so that for future reference, if you ever need to refer to a particular point, you can say on page 2, A3, you've got this. It's just sort of
Well, I
habit
appreciate,
that I've
yeah.
said.
No, I say, while I appreciate all of that effort, I'm comfortable with what Jim wrote, just for the sake of time.
Well, I think they need to be reminded of the fact that a lot of this stuff has been on their plate for several years. Now, if we want to, if you want to have us say it that way, yeah, that's cool too. I'm trying to be a little more subtle perhaps, but I have no problem wanting to communicate that thought, because in a way, that's partly why we're so motivated.
Which I
One
think,
is to get something that hasn't really been done before, which is the Northwest Superior aspect of things. And then the other one, which has sort of been on the boards for, no pun intended, for several years.
which I think your memo captured.
No, I think Jim's memo does capture that, because he makes reference to those dates in the past where things
Yeah.
were approved.
Right, that's right.
And
You
I
bet.
made that comment when I responded to his email about
Mhm.
how I liked his memo and how he wrote
Absolutely.
it. Because it really sheds light on the fact that a lot of this has already been approved and studied
No action.
without any action.
That's right.
And to Commissioner McCool's point, and I think also to yours, Commissioner Momartz, if the transportation in particular doesn't get addressed sooner than later, it's going to be more difficult to come into the town of Superior, to go shopping, to spend money, to live, to enjoy the area. And it's going to become a bottleneck.
That's right.
And that will result in no one wanting to come here.
That's right.
And so we need to plan to avoid that.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I think Jim has made good points
Oh,
all throughout his memo. So I think also in a effort of time. I read your email earlier today too, and it echoes the same thing as Jim's was.
I mean, basically, it's just reworking Jim's,
Yep.
except for the introductory,
Yeah.
preliminary paragraph.
Well, I take no pride in authorship on mine. I mean, we can make any changes you all want to make.
Okay.
It's perfect.
I just want to communicate a message.
Right.
Which is basically, hey, we've been, you guys have had this in front of you for some time now, and you put things off, it's going to cost you later down the road, and if we encounter problems with movement of traffic for town center, that's going to affect development, that's going to affect sales, that's going to affect success.
And what I'm reading as I'm reading your memo, though, I like the fact that you drafted, further staff has indicated that without direction from the town board requiring the prioritization of, like, you're reminding them, hey,
Absolutely.
we need you to do this.
To act.
So, yeah, so I'm fine with memo.
Shift gears a little bit, if I may. I think that we need to get this in a format that's acceptable to the board
Yeah.
first. Secondly, I'd like to propose we somehow either keep the font different between the two agenda items, so that they are separate, and so that they are distinct. Because if we kind of meld it all together, it kind of becomes one long run-on agenda item.
I
Good
agree.
idea. I'll go for that.
But it is technically one agenda item. We can't,
Right, but we
Of
often
course,
have more than one
technically,
Yeah,
attachment,
but
you
here-
know?
Here's a red
for
column, here's a
agenda
big
items.
column.
well, Stephen said 10 minutes ago that
Okay.
well, I mean, I'm game for, I like, trust me, I want them to be separate. But, I mean, I'd like to hear Stephen say it's okay to separate these documents out or
We can
not.
try to if you want. I mean, but the direction I had coming into tonight was that it needed to be one, so.
And that's not what I'm saying necessarily. I think that it can be one document, but there can be two separate concepts in that one
Yeah.
document.
Okay.
I think we can get there with headers and clarification and maybe just a short intro, but it's up to
Yeah,
you
so
guys.
the top level being work plan items, recommendation, work plan, planning commission, work plan item recommendations.
Recommendation.
With a brief
and
paragraph.
request for action on.
Maybe
it.
similar to what Bob,
Are you able to draft that after we leave, or does this need to be, like, completely finalized? Like an introductory
I think any
paragraph?
substance needs to be
Okay.
from the commission.
Okay.
so would Bob Momart's introduction on his work for our overall
For
intro?
an overall intro?
Do you have that in writing, Commissioner?
Mhm.
Can I type it in?
You have it printed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, or-
Yeah, you have it on your, in your.
You have it in email?
I don't
too.
have it printed.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I'm not really well versed in kind of legal drafting. By way of preliminary comment, can you explain the intent of kind of that phrase?
Just because you want, I'm trying to get them to understand what the single topic is that's being addressed by all of the other paperwork, all of the other discussion that follows. So I'm giving them, this is essentially sort of like a mini overview of
Oh, okay.
what are we talking about.
Okay.
So the only thing I would do now, given some of the feedback, is I would make some comment in here to the effect of, frequent encouragement from the board of trustee principals or something like that, to let them know that this is, they've got the work plan that says this is what we want to work on. They say, hey, go for it
Yeah.
when we want to work on it. Gee, we wish we could have done this earlier. All these kinds of things, they need to be reminded.
Do you care if we strike that by way of preliminary comment and just start with
No.
the planning commission's work
No,
plan was
no.
to focus on?
I'd say is to.
Is to
Yeah,
focus
and-
on.
It's under the heading of introduction, so
Yeah.
maybe preliminary comment is repetitive.
Yeah. A little, I mean, it's just a little legally sort of sounds,
No, it's not.
which none of the rest of the documents
I have to
are.
tell
No
you,
offense,
my-
Jim, but.
I think that my own attitude with respect to law is.
No, that's fine. Yeah. But
at
but yes,
the
I
same
like
time,
the general,
basis.
I like the general content here, and I think we can tweak it to fit the rest of the
Yeah,
verbiage.
I think you're right. I think this serves as good as the introductory
Yeah.
It's
paragraph.
good to remind them about the 88th Street issue too, because we
Yeah.
want to circle back on that one.
Yeah, we will circle
Yeah,
back
well,
on it,
yeah,
just not
yeah.
today.
It's an activist board, isn't it?
That'll be the next agenda item, 88.
Three agenda
Well,
items.
actually, you're
Well,
right.
Not
It's probably
tonight.
going to be.
Not tonight.
As much as I actually really do care about that item. Is this next sentence accurate? Have we submitted formal requests? What have we done?
Yeah, I was gonna let her finish typing and then we might have to
I don't know.
mildly
That's
tweak
an,
it.
I don't know if we've done that.
We've
or
submitted
not.
minutes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say they were formal requests.
Yeah.
yeah.
We separate-
Meeting minutes.
We've submitted meeting minutes.
Yeah,
Well,
they've
what
approved,
I was
they've
I was-
approved our meeting.
I was wondering if we
Well, I was
changed
really
them.
tending to communicate that this is a formal request.
Yeah, but
So
that we're
that they
making
can't
this.
sidestep it by,
I think this paragraph gets changed to what we're doing tonight, that we're
Yes.
making a formal request for action, blah, blah,
it may
blah,
have,
blah,
I
blah.
may have.
So maybe
misword-
it's the past tense of this
mis-
sentence.
yes.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
so as,
PC is submitting.
PC is submitting a formal request for approval.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, tonight, yeah, today, or, you know, whatever, yeah, the planning commission is, yeah, submitting a
Could say,
formal.
is hereby submitting a formal request, but no, that's kind of legally. I'm just teasing.
Approval of its recommendations, period.
There
yeah.
for.
I'd say approval of its recommendations and action thereon.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Lawyers with their therefores and their
Yeah.
withs and their eyes.
We're gonna have an objection.
Just to prove the darn thing.
Something tells me we're creating a case study that's gonna turn up in the law book somewhere. And say, this is what happens when a commission goes
Public
rogue.
versus town of Superior.
Don't give planning commission free for all.
Do you want to even mention 88th Street, or do you want to?
I would, yes, I would mention it because
Okay.
it's one of the three, and.
We will.
and-
Yeah,
and
that
it
would
will
just,
be
put yeah,
coming- and it's
recommendations
coming
regarding
down the
88.
pike.
Yeah, should be,
We'll probably wanna move on that before year end, don't you think?
I'm interested in hearing from the board to see if they have any interest in actually acting on all this work we've done. And I, you know, I guess.
Wait a minute, do we
Okay.
want to add that, since it's not anything formal in this agenda? You know, I mean,
So,
could
I
it be
mean-
construed as a missing piece?
I would
and
put that in
send it back,
parentheses,
or-
just because.
Maybe the parenthetical needs to be recommendations regarding 8th Street,
Boulevard.
88th Street, like planning commission's third agenda item or whatever, third work session, something
Mhm.
like that.
Sure.
After corridor, planning
Sure.
commissions. Yeah, I was just.
I guess the first question is, do we want to
Something.
pile on the various encouragements and what have you that they
Clarify that
have been giving
this
us
is the third.
all these months?
You know, I would.
I mean, I
I'm
think
not
we're
necessarily
I
saying
can-
in
Oh, okay.
quotation.
Oh, okay,
I
perfect.
can
Sorry.
remind them of that.
Okay,
verbally.
that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's probably better, right?
You know,
for the
part,
record.
part of it is, these folks are our friends.
Oh, yeah. It's a really good point. We're all on the same team, right? We are all on the same team.
That's fine.
I don't think we have any changes. Right, there's no changes we're making to Jim's memo?
So, I think, yeah. Correct.
And then we're, go to, yeah. And then you'll want to add whatever other recommendations, specific numeric
I
recommendations.
just want to put it down as 6, I think. Is that, would that be the right thing, you think? Just put it down as another recommendation relating to the
Right.
Northwest Superior?
And if you want to put a header within those two, you can too, if you want, it's up to you.
The Caslin recommendations.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
It's not
yeah.
Chris Maria. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
We'll correct all the font. It's got, there's one standard font that we have to use for the memos
Checklist
anyway,
of
so.
expenditures.
So there is.
You know, it's already in the minutes that they have approved.
There is a standard font.
So-
Yeah, there will be a font, so, sorry. But we're gonna get headers in there, Charlie.
Spell it out.
Yeah.
I can-
All right.
I can change
Yeah,
color,
I
maybe.
wrestle.
Very talented.
I'd be interested in how you side out.
I think the
Color.
Can we pull down the top of that page just a little bit? Thank you.
You want us to lower those things? No, okay. Yeah, I know, that's how that was.
You want to
Should we
separate
have
out the
something
big one?
like,
Go grab some water, folks. Do you want any water?
to implement the following measures along the McCaslin corridor, and concurrently approve and
How about, we could just take out the McAdam corridor.
Yeah, implement the following.
Measures. And then the approval of the 15 is like immediate.
good.
Yep.
2017.
Direct implement following measures.
There's an
To
extra.
include, but not limited to, approving and funding the expenditures or something like that.
So we had the language down in the,
Yeah.
The other
that
document.
motion, Yeah,
It is, okay.
yeah, that one.
for the community outreach program.
The italicized, right, in the quotes?
You don't want that open, do you?
No, I just think, for the, yeah, that's good enough, just to tie it back.
And then do you want 7 to be the 2018 budget for the area plan?
Yes, please.
Yes.
I think that language is there too, if you just want to borrow it, it was budget. Yeah, budget additional funds to cover the entire planning process related to development application.
Yep, that's it.
I think that came together nicely.
I mean,
I think that came together pretty well.
the water pipe.
Yeah.
I don't know when it came over me. Talking is not usually a problem.
Yeah, do we want to wordsmith that paragraph a little bit? Because that just speaks, I think, to the, oh,
No,
no,
we
you already
already
did
did.
it.
We
did
Okay,
that.
okay,
Yep.
thanks, yeah.
I think under number 3, there's an extra parenthesis at the end by 2000, between standards and 2017, and then that's space, yeah.
Well, you
No,
have,
there's a.
it's a parentheses on the other side too.
Right, beginning with.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
oh, beginning of recognizing?
Yeah.
That was something
Gotcha.
that Martin thought would be good to put in there.
Should we identify some wordsmithing since we're talking about that? Number 6, that's for Northwest Superior
I was
study.
going to say, shouldn't we, I mean, shouldn't they, I mean, these are two totally independent work plan items, but they've been all lumped together with 7 recommendations, which feels a little weird.
Yeah, it seems like there ought to be at least headings, maybe.
McCaslin Boulevard, yeah,
Yeah.
McCaslin Corridor recommendations, NWS
Okay.
recommendations.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe just,
I'd also like to strengthen.
Allow them to
above number
cherry
1.
pick, but that's not so bad either,
So it's up to you.
because at least they're making decisions on stuff.
guys, I would go down below that,
Yeah,
that
to number 1.
introductory
Why
paragraph.
don't we just restate it?
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
And then do another one for, yeah, okay. Yeah, all right, that's cool.
That's fine. So we could probably remove the 4 Northwest Superior, just approve.
Since we agreed.
Turn it around.
Yep.
I think we're getting there.
I think
Hillary?
I think we got it.
It's not McCaslin Street, it's McCaslin Boulevard.
You go causing trouble again.
I can edit it. I mean, we'll.
Yeah,
we'll-
you can do that
we
kind of
It's
stuff
just
for
not
us.
the substantive stuff. Good catch, though.
So do we want to get the words in there just to beat this dead horse as best as I can, but to take action and approve? I know we're just requesting approval, but
You want the word action?
I think the word action wasn't in an introductory paragraph, wasn't it?
well, under the recommendation, I just want to be really clear what we're asking of them, but,
Direct staff to implement. I mean, I think that's,
recommends that town board direct staff to implement.
should we be so bold to say direct staff this evening to implement the following measures?
Maybe in the introductory
Town board
paragraph for the
immediately
recommendation.
directs staff.
Immediately.
With all deliberate speed.
I'm gonna stop talking now.
I can see that in a way, you kind of like it. Uh-oh, she likes being, she likes lawyering a little bit.
Yeah, she
My whole family's attorneys.
You say immediately, like right after the meeting, I stay after and I start working on
think
it?
you meant during the meeting, yeah.
Post haste,
Immediately.
without delay.
Yeah, yeah.
We get into foreign languages.
I think it's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
So we're not gonna go with
Crafted a good
immediately?
one.
We're not gonna
We've
immediately
crafted a
direct
good one.
staff?
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
okay with that. I don't know.
You don't like that one, Stephen?
Which one?
No, you can put immediately, and I was just teasing. I see a joke, I take it. I don't give it much thought.
Yeah. We're not having fun, where are we here?
And it also kind of contradicts 2018, 2017 differentiation, but it's totally up to you if you want to put immediately in there.
Well, where I was coming from, just so everybody kind of knows what where my head was at is, and what I understood Alex to be saying is that unless the board directs staff to do this, it could sit on a shelf for 10 years. And so we're saying, okay, direct staff to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way to kind of contextualize it. I think what Alex was trying to clarify is we have a comprehensive plan. You know, there's no necessary timetable for those type of improvements. It's a vision, you know, just like our transportation plan. I mean, it doesn't necessarily say next year we're doing this or
Right.
within 5 years we're doing this. So I think what you're doing is saying, you know, we've done
put a
these things,
timetable.
and that was kind of what, I mean, he came and presented what's happened, and it was a pretty impressive.
It is impressive.
You know, to see what has happened since 2007, but there are things that are remaining, and it was also a good reminder, and that was what stuck in your head, was that we haven't done certain things, which is a great way to look at it as well.
And, you know, and I don't want to be perceived as being critical of our
You're not.
staff or
No,
what
no, no,
Alex has
but-
done. It's been great, you know, but I just want to make sure that, I mean, I think what I've heard from Alex and from Martin is that they welcome clear direction from the board. And what I'm hearing from the board is they welcome our involvement in telling them, here's how you need to direct. And
Right.
so-
No, I think that's true. I think that, I was just clarifying that Alex's point was that we have kind of these, you know, a little bit more nebulous, you know, governing documents that aren't necessarily implement action. And that happens more in a, you know, a yearly budget. Like if it's not budgeted for it, we can't, you know, he can't pull $1 million in order to create a roundabout.
Right.
So
But the
that's the
board can.
context. The board can budget that, yes, and that's what happens every year through their budget cycle is, you know, where's that money going to? But I think he also clarified that he gets about $1 million a year for public improvements related to roads. And so the ask, I mean, it would be an additional ask in order to keep up with general maintenance, to build
Yeah.
something like that.
Well, I mean, personally, and again, I'm not by no means an expert in municipal budgeting, but, you know, I mean, we're talking about buying, at one time, we were gonna buy Lake Shore. You know,
Right, no.
I mean, you know, there were a lot of problems.
You're exactly
You know,
right, and this is how you
improvements
get
that
those
have been
things prioritized, or help them with their priority, the board's priorities. So we're making a recommendation just like ProSAC or OSAC or
Right.
anybody else makes a recommendation. We just need to make as strong a recommendation as we can and get that in front of
Let them do
them.
what they wanna do with it.
Yeah.
Well, continuing to bring things that are in the various plans throughout this town is important, because they do get lost, and residents get pretty frustrated because they come back and say, well, gee, this was in the comp plan, this was in this plan, this was in this plan, why are you doing something totally different than what you said in the plan?
We want
Frankly,
what's in the plan.
Yeah, you know, I mean, we liked what was in the plan, you
That's
know?
right.
Let's decide to change the plan before we decide to not do what's in the plan and do something else, you know, so.
Well, and I think, I know we all want to kind of get going, but Bob, you really touched on something that struck a nerve with me, which is, you know, our memories, our collective memories are short, and we tend to just kind of do what needs to get done or what comes up immediately. And especially when it comes to the transportation plan, in my simple mind, way of looking at this, it's about keeping promises. We said we're gonna do it, let's do it. And before we start embarking upon other new things and other grand adventures, let's go back and do the things we said we were gonna do.
Right.
And then we can go embark on a new grand adventure.
Absolutely.
That's just how I look
absolutely.
at this.
Yep.
And I would emphasize that it's that important to make true on our promises in the past, especially because the town center is being built and how that's going to impact things.
Mhm.
Back in 2007, that was just a flash in the pan.
Mhm.
Today, it's reality.
Yeah.
This is happening. So if we don't address this now,
It can only get worse
it's
and
only
more
going to get worse.
expensive.
Right.
Well, and the economic changes, I mean, just in Colorado, period, have changed our
That's
entire
right.
world in the last 3 years. you know, so,
Dramatic. Yeah.
yeah.
And you guys have all made very good points tonight, that are points that you could also make at those meetings, you know, in the public
Yeah.
comment section. You could kind of preface everything with your own sentiments, and then focus the agenda item on summarizing your recommendations, or however you want to, you know, couch that or use that time. But
And I just want to make sure I get it right. So should I plan to speak during public comment as
that's
a resident?
totally up to you, yeah.
I mean, I can do that as a
Yes.
resident. But then should I plan to have prepared remarks to go over with the board as they take up this issue on the agenda?
I think that's in your best interest, is to have something that kind of outlines, you know, what your expectation, I mean, you guys have clarified it to me tonight, so I think you need, I mean, honestly, like, you just want to clarify it to them, you know? That's your opportunity to do so.
And
I'm
just-
not an advisor for you guys.
No,
but
I know, but
yeah.
here's where I'm coming from, because I don't know when I'm permitted to speak at these things.
Right,
You
that's
know,
right, yeah.
and we've gone to past meetings, kind of thinking, okay, when this comes up on the board, on the agenda, you know, it's go time, we're gonna get up and we're gonna talk about what we have to say, and it turns out that wasn't the forum or the time or the place to do it. So I don't want to like
Mhm.
miss that up.
Were you at the meeting when the committee member for art talked about the RFP for the roundabout? The new roundabout?
Yes. uh-huh.
So that's, I think, how your piece would go. She was called to the podium, you will as well be called to the podium, and you'll be presenting this memo much the same way she presented the
Okay.
findings for how to prepare the RFP.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful, Hillary, thanks.
Conversely, when it's your notes going to the planning commission or to the town board, planning commission's notes going to the town board for consideration, historically and currently, the opportunity is to get up during the public comment. So there's been discussion that we'll change that, and we'll have a formal, kind of like the Chamber of Commerce update. It'll be like an opportunity, and I think,
Oh, okay.
actually, Bob suggested this
That
a
would be
month
good.
or two ago. But that's what, it sounds like that's the direction that'll occur. There'll be like a standing item where you guys can provide updates and other committees can provide updates, and you can state it at that time, but, these are our notes, or this is what we've been working on. Even if there aren't notes that you're actually formally relating to them or whatever, you could go and provide an update. But that's what's
It seems
different
like
from
good
this
order.
time. This time you have an agenda item where you will have an opportunity to speak. Before it was, and I'm sorry if that wasn't clear, the
That's
opportunity
okay.
was during public comment to actually tell them that this is on your agenda, or kind of remind them this is on your agenda, and would, I think what the opportunity was for you to ask for feedback or ask for direction or whatever, and that didn't, sorry that wasn't clarified.
I wasn't
So-
trying to poke anybody in the eye.
No,
or-
no, that's fine.
I was just
I can
saying,
still
I
apologize.
just don't want to miss it again, so.
Can I say, now that I'm listening to all of this, on the public comment, it's on consent and non-agenda items.
Right.
So when they get up, if you get up in public comment, will the mayor then say, that's an item that we will talk about later? And then maybe comments will have to be done then. I don't know. I'm
I'll let you
just
respond.
kind of,
Teed up.
Possibly. Typically, that limitation is for items that will be public hearing items. This is not going to be a public hearing item.
well, and that's true, but I think the mayor always allows anybody to make public comment on any item that's on the agenda. So after everything, before the board takes any action, he'll say, is there anybody that wants to speak on this item?
Sure.
That's usually how he does it. Whether he will do it that night, I don't know.
My recommendation would be to at least one of you approach during public comment
ask.
Okay.
and begin to speak, and if the mayor then says, save that for when we get to agenda item 11, then you'll know that that's what you need to do, but I would hate for you to miss that opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
Okay.
point.
And then the other little nuance about the, right now, and it might be changing, so it may not matter, but like the public comment, and that you really, like those notes that you guys were passing, were on consent agenda. The board has the discretion to pull those from consent and actually discuss them. So that's where, if you were at public comment, you could ask them to consider pulling it so they could discuss it further and provide you feedback. You're here, you want this to move forward, whatever you want to do. So if that is the context in which those go forward in the future, that's how that conversation is supposed to occur. So.
Okay, that sounds great. Do we need to do anything more on these folks, or are we good to go?
Let's have a motion approving the recommendation, what you worked on tonight.
Can we
The
have
memo, yeah.
such a motion? Commissioner Momart, second. Commissioner Stewart, all those in favor? Unanimous. What did we decide? Do we want to make a motion requesting the town manager to put this on the agenda as an action item, or are we good to go without that? Thoughts?
We don't really carry the authority to do that, right?
We could always ask.
Can I ask?
Can I ask?
But we can just ask Stephen to do, we don't have to have a motion to do that. We asked Stephen already to do that, I thought.
You did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will.
So-
Yeah, that's all I need. If you'll ask them, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay.
All right, great. Stephen, staff announcements?
No announcements off the top of my head, and nothing currently on the agenda for the next meeting. So that would occur the night after your guys' meeting with the town board, so the 15th.
I'm not available on the 15th.
Okay. And I don't know whether or not if we don't have an actual development application to consider, which I don't think we will. I don't think we will till the 5th of September, the way the review schedule is looking. It's up to you whether or not you want to meet. So I don't know whether or not you're going to want to convene right after that meeting, or if you're going to want to just.
Yeah. Anybody have any thoughts? Do you want to do a work session? Do we have anything to work on, or where do we at on this stuff?
I kind of off the cuff. It depends on what they decide tonight.
Yeah, so we could schedule the meeting, and it could be a 10-minute meeting. I mean, we have to come if we schedule it, but it might be a short meeting if they don't do anything.
Yeah.
Or it might be a long meeting where we try to figure out how to get them to do something.
Yeah. What's our plan B is going to be?
88th Street.
Start at 88th Street.
Discuss
Wanna
it.
do
Yeah.
I'm gonna start that now.
Yeah, we could start on that.
Yeah.
for sure.
Start that now.
You guys want to meet then on the
Yeah.
15th?
Yeah, I'm good.
Sure.
Okay.
We could, yeah, I'd love to be part of that. I'm okay with starting it. I also don't want to get our focus too scattered.
Oh, I
Sure.
totally agree with you on that point.
With, if we are working on some of these McCaslin things and then potentially kicking off, a small area planning process. 88th is very important. I'm not trying to kick the can
I'm
at
not-
all,
no,
but
no,
I
no,
also
no,
want to
understood.
recognize
Mm.
everybody's time. I'm just throwing that out there for what it's
Well,
worth.
and, yeah, I think from the immediate future, NWS is probably more pressing than 88th, although 88th is more of a long-term issue.
Are our hands still tied a little bit on 88th? Remind me from an application perspective.
Remind you from an application perspective, we
From
have no.
like quasi perspective, if it's so.
I mean, I think effectively that, development will probably drive what happens on 88th Street. The town could also look to, do those improvements now and work to somehow get them refunded, when development occurs, but we don't have a current application. We have a stalled application on Anderson,
Okay.
and we have no application on Zaharias. So,
Okay.
just the concept plans, as you
Yeah.
mentioned earlier tonight in your response, so.
Are they planning on withdrawing? You haven't heard on Anderson, you don't
Nope.
know? Okay.
So, it's been 6 or 8 weeks.
Do we have any new building permits that have been pulled for anything?
Not that I am.
Townhomes was the last thing that was, the townhomes in Old Town, those were
It's
pulled
been
a couple months,
submitted,
right? Or-
yeah,
Well, but the permits have not been issued?
Not to my knowledge, no, so, yeah.
Okay. So are they doing, they haven't started demo down there. They can't demo until they have permits either, is that true, or?
They would need a demo permit, but I don't always get any update on that demo permit being submitted, so.
Okay,
There's no review for planning for a demolition permit, but it's,
okay,
I mean, they would need one.
okay.
So.
So, did we reach a verdict on whether we're having a meeting on the 15th?
I think we said we were. yeah.
We're, work
Yeah.
session?
We should, because if we get approval, then we can start going.
I know Steven's looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, it can be fairly generic at this point, and,
All right.
but, that we're working on the work plan, so,
Okay.
I mean, it's a work session, so.
All right, we'll plan on it, folks. Okay, anything else for the good of the cause?
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.